Thank you. Thank you. My name is George Thompson, and I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. The training you're getting a kind of peek at today is training I've been doing over the last 10 years, before probably over 40,000 cops and maybe over 400 police departments. My background for training in this is very strange. I spent the first 10 years of my career as an academic. I taught English. I was a professor in a university, taught Shakespeare, Milton, directed a writing program, and then, because I was getting, I guess, tired of doing academic meetings, I thought I'd try reserve work on a police department for a while, and I started out, and I got so much trouble from my academic colleagues who said that I was wasting my time out there, you know, driving a patrol car and making arrests as a reserve, that I decided, no, they were wrong. I was learning something. And I didn't know what I was learning, but I decided that they were wrong and I wanted to follow up on it, so I went full-time and I did 6 years of patrol work, mostly deep nights and K-9, some hostage negotiation, and I would still be doing that, I think, except in 1982 I wrote a short article for the FBI Bulletin called Rhetoric, which is the art of persuasion, an important tool for cops. And to my great surprise, I got over 600 letters back from that one article. I had never heard from anybody in my academic work. Nobody ever comments on an academic article, but for this article, I got over 600 letters back saying, this is neat, you do this kind of training. And I thought, what kind of training? You know, how in the world would you train people to do what cops do best when they do what they do best, and that is communicate under real pressure? And so I didn't know, but I thought, you know, when called, you better find an answer. So I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I now live, moved up 7,000 feet in the mountains, and took a year off and studied what, in fact, cops did, and then I went back on the streets. For the last 10 years, I have been with numerous departments on the streets, and in the last 4, I spent a lot of time in Southern California. I've done the entire city of San Diego. I come to you from LAPD, which, as you know, has had some coverage in the papers lately. I had not taught those young officers, but I can tell you one thing, they were within a week or two of that. And I'm doing 4 or 5 nights a week. I train 8-hour courses in tactical communication. And what I'm going to do today, as a civilian audience, I'm going to give you a peek at it, and then we will look behind the badge, in other words, for the next hour or so, and I'll try to show you what it is we do when we do what we do best. Now, as I tell young officers, no one ever wants me in the room. I'm usually mandated, you know, they're mandated to be there, and I'm usually asked to come, and when I walk in, they're sitting there. This is going to be a bunch of crap, you know, this kind of thing. Well, let me tell you something. Here's my first 2 points for police officers. You might want to make a note on this. The goals of what I teach. Number 1, officer safety. Your personal safety is also involved. We know, for example, that almost all violence in this country starts with a mind and mouth disharmony. Okay, a mind and mouth disharmony. The most dangerous weapon an officer carries is not his 9mm or his .358. What it actually is his cocked tongue. Fire off a sentence, can bury you in a career, can start a fight in the street, right? Can stall a career, can start a fight at home. Mind and mouth harmony, the most dangerous weapon if not in harmony, the most powerful tool if in harmony. Now that's goal number 1, officer safety, for the reasons I teach the course. Number 2, kind of an interesting one, I call it enhanced professionalism. That is the ability to look good, enhanced professionalism. All the guys I talk to are some of the best cops in the country. But everything I say in this course can do something measurably to improve the way you work under pressure. See, there's a style of policing for the 90s. It's not enough, we know, to be good any longer. You gotta look good or no good. We know, for example, a good arrest badly done on the streets equals 0 in court. We know that a good arrest, even well done on the streets but badly presented, equals 0 in court. So I talk about a kind of a strange art. I talk about the art of delivery, how to deliver bad news under pressure and make it look good and sound good as Good Friday night, make it sound good as Monday. All right, on Monday in court, it better sound the way it sounded on Friday and vice versa, and they better be good. Now, those are basically the 2 goals, and that gets their attention. You see, they sit up on that because they think it's going to be a bunch of PR. Well, it's not PR. There are 3 or 4 other goals that I mentioned to them. 1, this course works. We have decreased civilian complaints in this country 33 to 70%, depending on the department, almost overnight by running, you know, officers through this course. Also, we have decreased vicarious liability suits. You know, a single sentence on the street in America today can cost you $23 million. There's a lawsuit in Long Beach as I speak right on that issue, the Don Jackson, Mark Dickey affair. So everything I say, I imagine that's one of the reasons I'm hired, you know, is that when I speak, what I do is give training to officers to make them more calm, more professional under pressure. And finally, less personal stress would be a 3rd goal. Everything, in fact, you're going to hear today will do something measurably to decrease your personal stress. Because what I teach is a warrior's habit of mind. I do not teach PR. I do not teach reasoning, and I do not teach debate. What I teach is an ancient art lost and rarely taught anymore except in my class, and that is the art of persuasion. How to get people to do what you want them to do when they have no inclination to do it. The art of persuasion, and you know that if you've got families, all right? So those are the goals that basically I do, all right? Now, then I jump into the course and I'll ask police officers, and you might think about your children when I ask this question. I say, what is the bottom line of police work? And the answer, of course, is to protect and serve. They give me that one. They give me, get the bad guys off the street. They give me a lot of good ones, but the bottom line, the thing that makes police work unique, and the reason it interested me so much, is the last word in a four-worded sentence called compliance. See, police are the only ones that have to win out there on the streets. If they lose, they can get hurt or killed. So they must win. See, we don't debate with people out on the streets. Ma'am, you're under arrest. Put your hands up, sir. You, sir, turn around. I have a search warrant for your home, sir. We are coming in. See, these things are unarguable. But, not only must you win, but you got to do it right. You see, the issue is compliance. I had never worried about it. As an English teacher, I didn't have to worry about compliance. When I taught graduate school and undergraduate, Milton and Shakespeare, I didn't have to worry about compliance. If, for example, you would come late to my class, sir, I'd say, you, sir, get out. I told you day one. Be here. So make survival plans to be in my class. You understand? So you're gone. Oh, and you, ma'am, did you do your readings for this graduate seminar? Oh, you didn't? Bye-bye. Because you see, the goal of education is to expand the mind. I don't go over homework when I give it, right? What I do is give you homework to bring your mind from point A way over to here. And when I start talking, my job's to take you from here way over to here. And if you haven't done the reading, how can you listen to me? Now, there's nothing personal about that. I could throw her out and have a beer with her later. Nothing personal, you understand? But the point is, it's a privilege to listen to me speak, or so I thought in those days. And since you're not ready to listen to me speak, bye-bye. Now, what's interesting is that when I got on the streets, I'll tell you where an existential thing happened to me, and that's the right word, existential. I got on the streets and made my first car stop. This was about 3 in the morning. He had gone through 3 or 4 stop signs, failed to pull over. He finally pulls over. And I've been on the street one day. I walk up to him, and I'm a little upset at his driving, so I just kind of snap at him. You know, I say, you, sir, step out. And I heard a sentence I had never heard in my life. At least I can't remember it. And I won't use the language the man used, but you'll get the general drift. The man grabbed the steering wheel with arms as big as my legs, and he says, I ain't going to get out of this car. Da-da-da-da-da. You can imagine the words that follow that, right? And I thought, what did he say? Because my students never said I ain't going to do it, right? And my children don't talk that way to me. A couple of ex-spouses I have, because I used to do this wrong, they used to think of those sentences, but by and large, I had never heard that sentence. And frankly, I didn't know what to do, because no one in the academy had ever said, someone's going to look at you and say, I ain't going to do it. And so I remember standing there, and I didn't know what to do, so I just repeated it. I said, I told you, sir, step out. And he, being remarkably the same guy had been just 3 seconds earlier, said, I ain't gonna do it. Now here I am. You gotta see it the way I saw it. I'm standing there, and I'm 6'2", I'm 220 pounds. I was well trained. I have a black belt in judo, a black belt in taekwondo, right? I was a good shot. I had a good looking uniform, dark blue, had a new 357 on my hip, stainless steel. I had new Wellington boots, I just bought all-weather grips for my revolver, and I'm standing back there, and I'm kind of going back and forth, like rocking back and forth, thinking, well, I'm looking good. I even looked back to see if the patrol car was there. Yes, it was. The black and white was there. The visitor bar was there. It's looking good, I'm looking good, and yet nothing was happening. And I didn't know what to do. So I used the worst sentence you can use. You've all used it too, right? I boxed myself into that final corner. I said, I'm not going to tell you again, sir. Step out. And he said, I ain't going to do it. So I took him out. I just took him out. He said, why don't you take me out? That was his following sentence. So I acted on his advice, not having any good advice of my own that was any better. I ripped the car door open, and I'm the last guy you want to invite to take out, because I'll do it. I've been doing judo and taekwondo ever since I was 6 years old. So I pulled this man out, and I threw him down. You bet I did, and I cuffed him up. Took him to jail. Now, no brutality, you understand? Just quick technique, right? And I took him to jail. You bet I took him to jail, right? And 2 or 3 other guys gave me hassle that night, so the second guy only asked him twice, and the third guy only asked him once and took him down. So I had 3 good arrests. And I went home. This is my first day. I'm a rookie. I'm a puppy. Of course, I'm 35, but I'm still a puppy. I didn't know anything, see. And I go to bed, and the police chief calls me about 10:30 in the morning. He says, and in a very nice voice, he says, Thompson, would you come on down to my office for a moment? Now, to show you how brain damaged I was in those days, I really thought I was going down for a commendation. And I got down there, and I walked in, and he said, Put yourself in that chair. And then I knew by the tone of voice that I was in some deep trouble. And he said, by the way, why don't you look through that one-way glass over there? He had a one-way glass into a waiting room. And here, unmistakably, were two sets of parents, like great big bookends, sitting there rocking back and forth like this on a bench. And I said to the chief, I said, well, who are those people? He said, no, that's my question. Thompson, who are those people? What are they doing in here complaining about your behavior on the street? And I said, well, chief, wait a minute, you know. And he said, well, tell me what happened at 12th and Market, which is where that first car stopped. So I went through it with him, you know, line by line. I said, get out. He said, I ain't going to do it. I asked him again and so on. And when I was done with my narration, he said, well, you can't act that way. I said, well, chief, what should I have said now? I said, you tell me what I should say, what sentences would work, and by gosh, I'll do it, because I'd like to be a good police officer. I find this a challenging job. I said, you just tell me. And you know what? All his ranting and ravings and talking about PR, and we got to treat people with some kind of respect and so on, he didn't tell me what to say. He just finally got desperate, and he said, well, just get out. He said, don't do it again. And so I left like a Doberman, snapping like a dog, right? Because I'd come down thinking I was going to get a commendation. In fact, I got a condemnation, and I was not a happy trooper. And I went home, and I thought, what do you do? Well, before you're done with this course, I will show you what I train cops, how to deal with that. But I had to discover it on the street, because there's no training in this in America. None whatsoever. Now, that was my first experience, you see, because I didn't know anything about what? What kind of compliance is best? What would you say? What kind of compliance is best with your children, with your spouse, or with hard-nosed people in the street? What would you say? Give me a word. How about voluntary? Now look at that. Voluntary compliance. Get people to do what you want them to do, right? When they don't want to do it. Now voluntary means what? Well, voluntary is an interesting word. You know, it means willing. Now, what I tell cops is, I said, should you go and expect citizens to comply with your request just because you show up with a badge? And a lot of them think, well, yeah. And I said, well, you must be brain damaged. I said, what country are you working? This is the United States of America. And America is based on a single word, isn't it? Freedom. Which backs up to an earlier word, resistance. 1776, we kicked some serious butt, threw some people out of here. Remember that on a T-tax? What, by the way, what's the most American question in the world? It's got 3 letters to it. The most American question in the world. Why? Look at that face. Why? Let me see your driver's license, sir. Why? All right? You sir, would you step over here? Why? You see, I finally figured, and that word used to anger me when I was on the streets, but you know what? I like that word now, because I remember, right, it built America. And I'll tell you something about America, and then that, you know, particularly that one question. That one question, why, tore the Berlin Wall down. 20 years of the Cold War didn't do that, and that word why is tearing up the Russian Tsarist Empire as I speak. That word why is why we have police and why we have society that we have. The only country in the world in which why defines everything. So I teach officers how to deal with why. You know what I'm saying? Now, voluntary means get people to do what you want them to do because they choose to do it. And I say, so you can't expect that kind of cooperation. You have to generate it. So make a note. The crucial goal, all right? The crucial goal of law enforcement is to generate. Don't worry about my handwriting. It's always this way. To generate voluntary compliance, to get it to happen, to make people or get people or encourage people, right, to do what you want them to do because you show them that there's something in it for them. Right? In fact, America is based on 4 questions, if you think about it. Number 1 is why. Quickly followed by, who do you think you are to tell me what to do, sir? Quickly followed by a third, and where do you get your authority to tell me what to do, Jack? Those are all alike, aren't they? The resistant question. But then there's a 4th one, and that's different. That's more like this. Say, what's in it for me? I say, how can I fill my pockets here? You know, well, you know, what's in it for me? So what I've done, if you want to know the truth, in a single sentence, I have created a course that takes number 4, what's in it for me, right, to answer the first 3. Generate voluntary compliance, right? By showing people that there's something in it for them, and you have to be able to hook into people. I teach, if you will, a series of verbal come-alongs. Oh, not just physical come-alongs, which is also my hobby, but verbal come-alongs, how to get people to do what you want them to do. Think of your sons and daughters at home, right? Your spouses. This can help. Now, what's the first force option to get people to do what you want them to do? You see, police have 6 force options, right? But you really only have their first 2. What's the first force option? If you wanted to get somebody to do something, right, most people are going to tell me what? What do you think most people would say on the first force options? Anybody? You, sir.
Please.
What?
Would they say please?
Well, no, only if they were nice people, but by and large what you're saying is words, right? Well, you're wrong. The first force option is not words. Make a note. The first force option is something that we don't teach anywhere, but it's called, and I'll abbreviate, professional presence, right? Just how you show up. Just how you show up. I used to work with cops that could cause trouble just showing up. You know, guys that walk that 9mm walk, guys that walk like this, the gorilla walk. And you know when a guy walks up to you this way that the first words out of his mouth are not going to be, can I help you? You know that's true, right? So what I teach is a very strange art. You'll see this little guy up here. This is called a chameleon. It's my image for the cop. Right? Drawn for me by a man I put in a federal penitentiary in Lansing, Kansas years ago. He heard about the training I was doing, so he sent me a bunch of drawings, okay? And he said, it seems to me you're teaching cops this. And then I thought about it, and I thought, that's exactly right. The art of the chameleon, right? What is it about a chameleon? If I throw a chameleon on that coach, sir, what will he do? He blends in, he changes, right? Throw him on this floor right here, he blends in. Blendability, flexibility, adaptability, those are the survival traits of a good communicator, particularly a good cop. Let me give you a good definition of street savvy. This comes after 40,000 cops, all right? The best definition we have of someone who has street savvy in dealing with people goes something like this. If you have the ability to become who you have to be to handle the scene in front of you, you're a pro. And the crucial word, of course, is become. Put on a face to meet the faces that you meet. For example, one face for some little old lady lost and confused trying to find the stadium of the L.A. Dodgers, and another face for some hard-nosed street kid trying to give you a little trouble, possibly intimidate you. Speaking of communication, you ever made the mistake I used to make? I bet you've all made it, right? You ever pointed at somebody said, or several people, and said, you people are going to have to calm down. You, sir, calm down. Now, look at that. Look at that. First of all, that's wholly ineffective, wouldn't you say? I mean, is this a calming face? I mean, forget the words, right? I mean, is that a calming face? No. Don't you think if you were going to calm somebody down, you ought to put on a calming face, more like this, perhaps? Going to be all right, sir. The words flow from the face. See, you got to have multiple faces. I don't care where you work. I don't care if you're actors. I don't care if you're in retail. I don't care if you're professors. I don't care if you're working in some business like IBM or Metropolitan Life, right, sales. I don't care what it is. You've got to put on 100 faces a day or you're making a mistake. You got to look interested when you do not feel interested. You got to look calm when you were anything but calm. And the work I used to do, I used to have to intimidate a whole bar just with simply a face that looked like I could handle it. And inside, maybe I'm going, oh no, what am I doing here? But outside, looking good. You got to look good or no good. That's an ancient street principle. Remember, not enough to be good. You got to look good or no good. Now, that's force option number one. We do no training in it whatsoever. Right? There's no formal training aside from my 2-day course, which I often give, in how to put on a face to meet the faces that you meet. The great art. The faces, right? Put on a face to meet the faces that you meet. Now, what's number two? Now, number two, you'd be right. What is it, sir? What's your name, sir, in the front?
Eddie.
Eddie, go ahead. Whoosh-ah!
Please.
No, forget about please. Words. The right words for the right person at the right time, right? See, one set of words, sir, might calm you down. Would not work for her. How many of you have more than one child? Yes? 2 or 3 children? Yes? Do you talk the same way to them? If you do, you're crazy. You got to use different words for different people. One kind or set of words might work for one person, wouldn't work for another. So let's take a look at the example. Calm down. Now, we know the face is no good, and we know the finger's no good, and we know, right? That's no good. That's no good. Now, what about the words? Take the words calm down. Have they ever worked at home, ladies and gentlemen? Let me ask you this. Here's a litmus test for the streets. Right? Gentlemen, how does it work with mama? How does it work with mama when you tell her to calm down? What does she say? Well, ladies, give it to me what you say. If I say, you calm down, what would you say? Hey, I'm plenty calm. Why, right? I'm plenty calm. You calm down. I have never known those words to work. They have never worked in my 2 divorces, right? See, I didn't have this course, and so I made drastic blunders. You understand? These words don't work. You know why they don't work? Anybody want to know why they don't work? They don't work, okay? Because when a person is not calm, they themselves have a problem. And you have just used words not to address their problem, but to what? To make them the problem. So now here's a person with a problem that you're now making a problem. You, calm down. And no wonder they go like that. So here's the litmus test. If it don't work with mama, don't use it on the street. And that, ladies and papa, would be the same thing. You know, there's no sexism here. Look here. If it doesn't work at home, it isn't going to work anywhere else. Now, those 2 options, if you take a look at them, we do no training in America on this. And remember, America's getting increasingly a dangerous place. This is a place where people are getting into verbal arguments that then escalate into shootings because we're living closer and closer together. The training I do could, in fact, save us. It's the only thing I think that can save us. How to talk to people, because if you can't talk to people, you got yourself a problem. You can be shot off your bicycle. You can tell your kids this. You can be killed on your front porch if you've bad-mouthed, put somebody down, or made them feel bad. All right? Now, the 2 options I'm talking about, professional presence and the ability to use the right word and the right person at the right time, is what we call verbal judo, or tactical communication. See, I don't teach anybody can talk. Hey, anybody can talk. Few people can communicate. Communication under pressure is not a natural action. It is a highly artificial, skilled thing, much like taekwondo, combat judo, or aikido. That's why all the principles of communication I teach are based on empty hand control principles. Mastery through adaptation, by the way, is an ancient fighting principle. Okay, so now we have a goal to generate voluntary compliance. Take it home. Next time, don't be snapping at your children or your spouse. They're not going to do it. That encourages resistance, right? You got to be able to use words to redirect behavior, right? And the right face and the right words combined. All right, so now we have a goal, generate voluntary compliance. We have force options. Now let's take a look at a third element, a habit of mind. I said I'd teach a habit of mind. You know, the old warrior state of mind in Japanese was called mushin. One of my hobbies is ancient warfare, and I've read a lot about it. The word mushin, M-U, means know, shin, mind, S-H-I-N. It's one word, all right? Mushin, no mind. It does not mean ignorance or stupidity. What in fact it means is still center. Example, you have an ancient samurai surrounded by, say, 3 would-be attackers in a field. His first great skill, from which all others of his skill would then flow, would be his ability to go absolutely still center. No bias, prejudice, mental sets, emotions, right? Or anything in the mind to get in the way of responding to an attack, no matter how unexpected or from whatever direction it might come. Now, I argue that to be a good communicator, you must have a very similar kind of mindset. You've got to evacuate from the mind all those biases and prejudices that make you ineffective in dealing with people. For example, the closest word in English that we know is disinterested. Now, this does not mean uninterested. If you know your Latin, of course, dis means not, and interested means biased. So it means not biased, or, if you will, open, flexible, and unbiased, okay? Open, flexible, and above all, unbiased. You cannot be a good communicator if your mind is closed, if your mind is inflexible. Flexibility, by the way, is a great strength of the mind. I don't teach weakness. I teach, if you think of the Bear recurve bow, okay? It has tremendous power because of its flexibility. And the mind must have the same kind of thing. Now, the idea of being unbiased is very difficult in America because in America you have one guaranteed right. If you don't like me, for example, because I have blue eyes and brown hair, then don't invite me to the barbecue! But if you put on a star, if you put on a badge, this is what I teach the cops. If you put on a star or badge and you're going to walk the walk and talk the talk of the United States Constitution and Bill of Rights on the streets, you've got to keep your biases where? At home by the barbecue. And you know what's interesting about America? There is no training to do that. All right, and this is what I'm trying to address. You've got to have an open, flexible mind. Now, we know, for example, in the greater LA County, there's over 102 distinct cultures. 102 distinct cultures. And if police do not know some of those cultures, they can get hurt and killed. For example, if I'm serving a minor felony warrant to a Thai Laotian home and I happen to have my black boot on the threshold of his house as I hand him the warrant, do you realize I've just committed a deadly sin? What am I stepping on? I'm not stepping on the threshold. I'm actually stepping on the ancestors' graves. They believe that their ancestors live in the threshold around the home. And I'm just stepping on their grave. I've just given him every right, in other words, to slap me upside the head, right? And the only reason he doesn't is that he is politer than I am smart. And if I had time, if I could run officers, and in fact most civilians, through a 40-hour course in intercommunication, I would do it. Intercultural communication as well as tactical communication. But since I can't, I'm going to offer you something you can take home. You can forget about the 102 cultures because by and large we haven't got time to study them. We're busy people. But you know what? There's only 3 kinds of people that cut over all color boundaries, all cultures, and all religions. 3 kinds of people. Number one, nice people. Now, nice people are what I define as single-keyed individuals. That is, they will always cooperate with you no matter how you say it. You can be polite or you can be rude and discourteous, but they are law-abiding people. They are like my grandfather, who was a world authority in contract law. My grandfather could have been stopped by you, sir, if you were a police officer. You could have treated him rudely, discourteously, and my grandfather would have only said, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know why? Because he has a greater belief in the law and his obedience to the law than your particular performance of it. Now, nice people like to cooperate. They think that cooperation is of value, and there's millions of those people out there. Perhaps there are some in this audience because you're primarily civilians, but let me tell you something. I'll bet you most of you are not in this group. I am not in this group. Most cops are not in this group. We are not nice people. We are my second group. I call these people, and I abbreviate, difficult people. D-I-F-F-I-C, baby. Difficult people are not single-keyed. They are, in fact, multiple-keyed. Look, you should make a note. I am constitutionally and temperamentally incapable of doing what people snap at me to do the first time. What's the first thing out of my mouth when people tell me what to do, do you think? Why? What for? Where do you get your power, right? You're just like that. I'll bet most of you are difficult people. Now, the thing about difficult people, most of the time they anger us. I remember when I first went on the streets, it was difficult people that really pissed me off. And I'll tell you something. I had to do a flip-flop. And the way I did it was, I simply finally admitted, I'm one of these people. In other words, the next time a guy got in my face and gave me a lot of trouble and told me what I was and so on, I just kind of laughed and said, my kind of guy. You know, you're just I'm my kind of guy, right? See, I don't fish. When I go fishing, I don't fish for carp. That's too easy. See, I fish for difficult fish. I'll climb up the Sangre de Cristo Mountains and I'll fish the high mountain streams. And there, if you haven't got the right technique, you catch nothing. But even if you do hook onto something, you can't just reel it in. You have to what? Play it in. Let it run and whoosh-ah, let it run and whoosh-ah, and finally whoosh-ah, bring him out, you see. And see, I have kind of a Chinese mentality on this. The Chinese word for crisis, interestingly enough, comes from a word meaning opportunity. I have gotten to like difficult people. See, difficult people, you can get to cooperate. Your children are probably difficult people. Your spouses are probably difficult people. Let me tell you something. They never cooperate the first time and usually not the second. Somewhere around the third and the fourth, with techniques that I will teach you later, you can get actually 9 out of 10 people to do what you want them to do, no matter whether they want to or not. But you got to be tactical. You got to be skillful. Now, difficult people, I look at these faces here. Some of you people are difficult faces. Survey the room with me. Look around at some of these faces. For example, this man here, he's a difficult man. And look at this man back here. Now, there's a difficult face. Look at that face right there, right? Right? Look at that face there. Now, this woman here, she looks like she could be difficult. She's looking at me and say, well, I don't know about that. You know, and look at this man here. This guy here, right out of the local tavern, right? Let me tell you something. You should take some pride in being difficult. All right? Difficult people, if you mistreat them, will hurt you. See, if a cop stopped me and insulted me in front of my wife and children, called me a name, my first sentence would be, what did you call me? Now notice that he has built ground for me to stand on, because you know, in all the 102 cultures we know about, there is no culture in which a personal insult is anything but a fighting issue. All right? You got to treat people with some kind of dignity and respect, and that's what I teach, how to deal with people right under pressure with dignity and respect, because if you don't, you're going to get hammered. You're going to get hammered. But if you are skillful, if you care about the goal, getting people to do whatever it is you're wanting them to do, you can get 9 out of 10 difficult people to do it without laying a hand on them. And that's in police work, all right? Imagine in your world you can get almost all those people to do it. Now, so nice people are single-keyed. Multiple people, these people are multiple-keyed, the difficult people, right? And I'm a difficult person, I'll bet you are. Then there's a third group. And I don't think we're in here, but these people are out there. These people sound like the first group. They go, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. These people don't mean oh yes. You know what they mean? They mean oh no. These people I call backstabbing wimps. People that get you back, right? People that get you back in the back later. Looky here. These people, right? Always, oh yes, officer, oh yes, sir, oh yes. They mean oh no. There's a cloud of illusion around that, yes. And if you don't know that they're two-faced, they go, oh yes, and they stab you in the back. These are where our personnel complaints come from. They might come from difficult people, but the difficult people will tell you they're coming. I'm going to see your supervisor. And that's my kind of guy. Get in my face. But oh yes, officer, oh yes, you see. And you deal with them on a daily basis. And in fact, these people are ruining America. If you think about them, these are what I call the success individuals of America. Climbing the ladders of success. Oh yes, oh yes, These, right? You know these people, don't you? You've all met these people. Now these people are dangerous, all right, because they don't appear to be what in fact they are. And what you have to do is be able to read such people. See, I teach what the old Indian taught me when I was 6. I was born in Hollywood, California, so don't give me any trouble, I'm a native. But I was transported, went 2 years old, by train to Ithaca, New York, upper state New York, and I was raised by my grandparents and an old Cherokee Indian. And when I was 6, he took me out one day and pointed at an obvious trail in the forest. He said, see trail? I said, I see it. And he says, it was obvious. Then he pointed to what looked to me like a bunch of bramble bushes, and he said, see trail? I said, I can't see anything. See, couldn't see. It took me 1.5 years to see what he had seen. Then a deer had gone through there 15 minutes before, and I didn't know how to read. He taught me to read a trail, and I guess what I've dedicated my life to is teaching you, right, and people like you, 50,000 of them across America, to read people, read encounters so that you can become more effective and get the job done. These are my three kinds of people. Now notice how they cut over all color boundaries. I'm not interested whether a man's white, black, or Hispanic. I don't give a darn if he's a Laotian, a Guatemalan, a Thai. I don't care if he's a homosexual, transvestite. I don't care what he is. I'm not hired to care about what he is. I am hired to get the job done. And notice these three definitions, right? Nice, difficult, and wimpy. They cut over all color boundaries. They cut over all cultures. And if you want to evacuate, right, from your mind all the stuff your parents taught you, which was brain damage. All of you were raised, as I was, by brain damaged individuals called parents, right? Parents, you know who they are. People that teach you that your color is better than somebody else's. Your value systems are better. Your belief systems are better. You're just somehow better because you're from a different neighborhood than so-and-so across the track there, right? And I say that's BS. Those are all lies. In America, there is only difference. There is no better. And then you cannot work with people under difficult conditions. See, I teach people that if they make a mistake in communication, they'll die. So they have to listen. You have the opportunity to listen. All right, these people. Now that's one way you develop what I call mution. And there is a second. There is a second way. How do you handle verbal abuse? You know what's interesting? I was raised in mountain philosophy. And in mountain philosophy, you take nothing from anybody. I was raised poorly in that case. I was always addressing people. You know, they'd say something and snap at me. And, you know, the playground mentality. And I was always saying a sentence like this: who are you talking to? Which is, if you think about it, a stupid sentence at all times, right? Because unless there's somebody directly behind me, right? Why would you say it? But at any rate, I was always fighting, and I burned more bridges and had gotten more scars to prove I know how to do this business wrong. And it was only when I became a police officer, where I started to take abuse for a living, that I decided, with my temperament, which is, by the way, I have a hot temper. Nobody in this room has a hotter temper than I do, and yet there is no one in this room that can pull it anymore, because I've learned what I teach. I'm proud of that. You can't get rid of the temper, but you can put a trigger guard around a lot of that stuff. But here's the point. How do you handle verbal abuse? Well, it's hard to do it nicely when somebody's in your face, see? But you got to do it, right? See, you got to do it, but we don't teach anybody, and I've come up with a way of deflecting. You see, I take it from martial arts. For example, when I teach fighting, right, I teach that if a man throws a fist at my face, you don't want to block it hard, because if you do, you throw him way over there, and then you have to go get him, and you can see how that would be an officer safety problem, see? In fact, what I teach when I'm teaching the strat guys is that if you throw a fist, you just wait for the last second, let the fist go right by it. Whoosh-ah! Man, right there. If fist here, then throat would have to be there. So it's slight deflection. Okay? Now, I'll tell you where I got that idea from: reading into martial arts. I was reading one time, because I was taking immense abuse, immense verbal abuse. I never got so much verbal abuse as I did as a cop. All right? Never got so much. And so I was not reacting well to it initially when I went on the streets. And so one day in my reading, I came across an old samurai lesson. A 7-point lesson, and here's the first. Imagine a bunch of puppy samurai sitting in a circle, all right, and they're being talked to by old master. Here's the first thing the old master said. He said, "Gentlemen," this is translated now from the old Japanese. He said, "Gentlemen, when man throws spear of insult at your head, move head. Then spear sink in wall. Not take it in." So you have disempowered him. Now, I like that. I thought that was elegant. I like that better than the sticks and stones philosophy that's so indigenous to our culture. So I read on. You know, I read on, right? And I tried to ask, how do you do it? Well, he didn't significantly say how you did it. So about 6 months into police work, I discovered it for myself, and it was one of those existential things. I mean, my life changed after this. I stopped a pickup truck filled with angry, drunken cowboys after a rodeo, and apparently they had not done well at the rodeo, because the driver was in my face, calling me all those kind of names, you know. And I remember saying to him, and he's shaking his great big ham hock-like fist under my face, I remember saying, he said, "Well, you're just blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Well, I appreciate that, sir, but listen to me. Sir, listen to me. I need to see your driver's license." Notice what I did. I said, "Appreciate it." Now, if you think of that word, you'd want to spell it P-R-E-C-I-A-T-E. Appreciate that. Now, if you think about it, there is no such word as appreciate. See, I do not appreciate being called a name, but I can appreciate it because it's prefab language. So I had found my deflectors. And then I started to watch great cops work. You know, they got a whole bag of those. For example, I made up a second one. "You're just a such and such." I said, "I understand that, sir, but listen to me. I need to see your driver's license." I understand that. See, I can understand anything. No D on that word. Just understand. I understand that, sir, but listen to me. Appreciate that, right? And then I had another one. "Oh, yes, you know. You're just such a..." "Oh, yes, I understand that, but listen to me." Right? And so now notice what they do. Since being in Southern California, I have heard cops, you know, in Inglewood, Hawthorne, San Diego, LA County. I've done the entire LA County sheriffs. I picked up the following phrases. How about this one? "You're just a such and such." "Well, I hear that, sir, but listen to me." See, I can hear anything. All right? How about, I got that. Right? "You're just a such..." "I got that, but listen to me." Right? How about I believe that? You're just a such and such. Well, I believe that, sir, but listen to me. Right? How about that's a fact? You're just a such and such. Well, that's a fact, but listen to me. Listen to me. See, what I've done is create a series, and this is what I teach the cops, a series of prefab strip languages that you can use like quick punch, like deflect, and move. Now, if you think of those words, appreciate it, but they do four things. Number one, because I know they're tactical, I know I'm using them for a purpose, I feel good. See, normally there's an old street truth that says if you feel good, no good. Right? If you say what makes you feel good, that's what we call people names on the street. Let me tell you something you said about, right? And it makes me feel good. Well, normally I teach that if you ever say what makes you feel good, you're making a mistake, you understand? But in this case, right, it's not so. For example, I learned this from my dog. See, when I was doing canine, my dog had a snap-on collar, right? And whenever I snapped the collar on, he was a police dog, a police attack dog. But when I took him home and would unsnap the collar, he instantaneously became what? A pet. And then the kids could wrestle with the dog. Mama could poke the dog in the eye and wrestle with the dog, and no problem. You see, no problem, right? But the moment I snapped his collar back on, then puppy dog became police dog, and then you didn't mess with the dog. No one poked him in the eye, not even his handler. See, so these are my linguistic colors. This is what I teach those cops. You ought to think about this yourself when people upset you in a store, when your kid snaps at you and says something you don't like, and if you get it personally involved and want to come after people, you're going to make some serious blunders, all right? You need to deflect it. Appreciate that, but listen to me. So number one, it makes me feel good because I know I'm working tactically. But there's a second reason. There's a second reason. I call it the springboard and focus technique. For example, you see how quick the words are? Appreciate it, but. Understand that, but. I hear that, but. Well, what they do is springboard me over all the pitfalls that I can get into as a professional, right? Arguing playground stuff. See, I'm not hired to argue with people. Right? And Don Jackson, for example, that's causing that problem, that caused that problem down in Long Beach, went down there and got that officer all upset and he overreacted and so on, which is no excuse for that. Right? What's interesting about it is if Mark Dickey had 5 minutes of this class, he would never have had that problem. See, you get in my face, I understand that, sir, but listen to me, I need the driver's license. Notice that I springboard across all that other stuff. See, the Don Jacksons of the world know the same thing that every citizen knows. And what's that? That if he can upset a professional, whether it's a police officer or somebody in a role, like in a store, right, at Nordstrom's, if I can upset the clerk or the sales representative, I'm going to win somewhere. And if you can upset me as a police officer, you're going to win somewhere. You're going to win on the street, and if not on the street, you're going to win in court. And if you don't win in court, you're going to win in the most deadly of all arenas, the media. See, I teach cops they got to win 3 areas: street, right, court, and media. So notice it springboards me right to the butt. Okay, because I don't get into discussions with people. I'm not there to argue with people. Now, what does the butt do? It focuses. Think of it like a camera lens. Everything after the butt, and here's the law of the streets. Everything after the butt must be professional language. Appreciate that, but I need the driver's license. Now notice I'm on him like a Doberman. I'm not going to get off your throat until I get the driver's license. See, so you can't foot sweep me away, you understand? You can't get me all upset and derail me. That's not going to happen. I own you, see, because I have that. So secondly, it's a springboard and focus technique. And third, what did it do to the man who threw the spear? Hey, you, right? What did it do? It disempowers him. See, weapon not in me, he no longer has weapon, he disarmed. Right? You don't want to give people any power. You need to take this home to your kids, because the fourth reason is it sounds good. Remember, I deal with teaching people who have to act in front of others all the time, high visibility. When a cop, like when I'm talking to you, sir, and this is your lady here, why, she's watching me perform before you. This man bypassing the event is listening and watching me perform before you. My supervisors are defined as watching me, right? And so I got to be good because I talk in a fishbowl. You understand? So when I say, appreciate that, sir, but listen to me, or ma'am, listen to me, I understand that, but listen to me, I sound good to what I call the Mr. and Mrs. Smedleys of the world. And these are people who don't swear and don't like swearing in the street. They don't like their cops to sound like the people they're arresting. So there's 4 reasons, you understand? It makes me feel good because I'm tactical, right? It springboards me right to my focus, which is my professional thing. It disempowers the guy, right? And it sounds good. Now, you should take that home to your children, because it used to be that we would teach our children to be kind of macho. You know, somebody said something, address it. And if you don't address it, you're somehow weak. Now I say to you, they're carrying knives and guns in elementary school. And you need to train your son the way I've trained mine, and that is you need to have some kind of ability to walk with dignity and style through all kinds of verbal abuse, right? Because cops take verbal abuse for a living, but so do kids. All right, and we've got to teach them a way to handle that. You know, a guy says, well, you're just a such and such. I understand that. Well, you all take care and walk on, see? Because if they don't, You stir them up, you get them into that macho business, which has defined America up to this time. They're going to get shot off the bicycle going to school, or they're going to get beaten half to death behind the school when school is out. Now that's the Mushin state of mind. The ability to handle anybody under pressure. Nobody should ever get to you, sir. Man, right in your face. Let me tell you something, Buster! Right in your face, you see? That's in your face. Let me tell you something, Jack. Right in your face. Now, we do no training, right? This is the training that will allow you to look at that man, stay calm, keep your distance, say, listen to me, sir, I understand that, but think how helpful that would be. Think of all the complaints that stores get because clerks take things personally. Hey, I didn't sell you the shirt, Jack, that's unraveling around you, and the policy says no returns, right? And so the person leaves, he never comes back to the store, he gets all upset, or worse yet, the clerk has to say, well, I'll get the manager. Well, the manager doesn't want to be bothered with your inability to deal with people, right? And so what I do is teach them how not to take it personally. You know what the greatest enemy in communication is? Ego. Ego. See, you got to put your ego into the job. You got to put your ego into the goal. If my goal is to get somebody out of his house on a domestic dispute, that's exactly what I'm going to do. You're coming out, sir. But I'm not going to get all personally upset about it, right? Because my job is to think for you when you can't think for yourself. 48 to 72 hours later, I'll think the way you might think. You understand? So I have to do the thinking for people because when I deal with people, they're usually under the influence, right? As a cop, almost all people are, right? Brain damage, by definition, they're under the influence of liquor, drugs, rage, fear, right? Depression, ignorance, and stupidity, right? Or just anxiety. And all those things, don't all those things work the same way in the human mind that liquor and drugs do? You see, they dull the mind. And so the great service that cops do, we protect and serve. You know what that means? We will protect you from yourself and others, and we will serve you by thinking for you as you might think for yourself 48 to 72 hours later without the influence, whether it's Mama San on the steps watching you, or the homeboys behind watching you, or some kind of liquor and drugs. And with that habit of mind, you can walk safely in America, and without it, you're going to get yourself hurt. Therefore, what are we talking about? We're talking about the art of being a contact professional. You know, if you look at the word contact, it comes from Latin, C-O-N, meaning with, and tact meaning what it means in English, skill, touch, in touch with. And what I teach cops and what I'd like to pass on to you today is the ability to make contact, to establish contact with people that may not wish to talk to you, to maintain that contact when it's in their interest to make you break it off, and to use contact to achieve professional purposes. And what I have is a little diagram so you can take it home with you. The bottom line is this: you stand between a rock and a hard place whenever you deal with people. Number one, if you're hired professionally to represent something other than yourself, you have to be an artist at representation. The ability to represent the organization, whatever it might be. It's a police department, it might be a studio, it might be a business. You have to speak in such a way as to represent the department to the subject that you're dealing with. You see, you're in the middle. The subject is in a box. This is the C for contact, the person you're contacting. But he's boxed because I believe that when you talk to most people, they're under the influence of something. Anxiety, expectation, fear, anger, liquor, rage, it doesn't matter. And your kids are the same thing. They come home and are filled with anxiety about what might have happened at school. So the box represents the various kinds of influences a person can be at any one time. And what I teach people to do is to represent the organization to the person you're particularly contacting, and to do it in such a manner, in such a way, right, as to bring them back into compliance. Whoosha! Bring them back into compliance. You understand what I'm talking about? So now we can say what good police speak is and what it isn't. Good police speak, for example, contributes to voluntary compliance. And ineffective police speak makes it more difficult. Hence calling people names, putting people down. See, I've read the Constitution over 600 times, and you know what? I can't find anywhere in there where it says you can badmouth people, racially epithet people, and put people down. I'm beginning to think it's not in there, which means that we've got to be better than that. Now notice something. You've got to represent the organization, its philosophy of doing business, its products, right, to the customer in such a manner as to whoosha, and whoosha means take them out, right, accomplish the goal. In such a way as whoosha, bring them back into compliance. Now, make a note. All these things here, philosophy of doing business, products, a way of life, a city, whatever you happen to represent. Let me ask you something. If you look at this little drawing, what's happened to me, the contact professional, in the middle? In my drawing, have I not disappeared, basically? I'm basically obliterated. So you might want to make a note that if you want to be an effective communicator, you must get rid of ego. See, if you break, this is a figure eight. It's a symbol of the yin and the yang. all right? And you stand right in the middle. And if you break it over here, call a guy a name for you. Let me tell you something, right? You call a guy a name, you make it all the more difficult to generate voluntary compliance. You put your kids down personally, call them names, right? Tell them they're stupid. You've broken the figure 8. You get nothing but resistance that way. If you show too much ego, see, I'm a great believer that you got to put your ego, as I said earlier, into the job. Put your ego into the service, all right? You got to have some pride in what you do. You got to have pride. You can walk the walk and talk the talk. But, of course, you see what I'm teaching here, don't you? Is how to walk your talk and talk your walk. The greatest skill of all, street talk. How to get done what has to be done. You understand? Now, so you must obliterate ego. Must obliterate it. See, in fact, this is a sign of great leadership as well. Great leaders stand between the organization and their particular team of people. And they have to represent the organization to their team in such a manner that those people will do what you want them to do when you're home in bed sick. Whoosh-ah, bring them back, you understand? And you got to get rid of ego, and ego's destroying America. People climbing that ladder I mentioned earlier of success rather than success. You see, if I were a sergeant, for example, on a police department, right, I should, once I get those stripes, never again do anything to simply advance my simple little career. I must instead put my ego into my team. And as my team does well, of course I'll do well. But the moment I try to step on people's heads and shoulders, climb over people, badmouth people, and put people down, you see, I lose all my force. We're talking about great force here. We're talking about a tremendous force. You think of the people when you go to a store, how many of them just represent the organization? Well, I'm sorry, sir. That's our policy. No return of sale items. And you want to go like this, you know? That's not what you want to hear. You know why Nordstrom's became one of the top department stores in the world? Because they actually took clerks and turned their jobs into professional representatives, and they taught them to represent Nordstrom's philosophy of doing business and their products to the customer, and to do it in such a way as to get me not only to buy the shirt the first time, but want to go 12, 14, 24 miles out of my way to shop at a Nordstrom's rather than some other store that goes, thank you for shopping here, right, in those formulaic kinds of ways, if you know what I mean. Now, if you're going to be a contact professional, capable of maintaining contact, using contact, right, to achieve professional purpose, you got to know something about communication. Now, my course starts with 3 survival truths. You ready for the first one? What's the opposite of talking? What do you think, ma'am? Well, that's better. So I hear listening. You got to be kidding. You got to be kidding me. If you think the opposite of talking is listening, you badly need my course. Let me tell you something. Listen, why would IBM spend $8,000 to $10,000 to have a guy like me come in for 2 or 3 days and teach a course in active listening if listening were a natural skill? Do you realize that good listening is no more of a natural skill than taekwondo, aikido, combat, judo, or anything else that you have to learn? It is a highly artificial tactical skill. Let me tell you something. You want to be a better communicator? You better understand reality. And I take all my stuff from the street. If it doesn't work on the street, you won't hear about it. Number one, the opposite of talking, you were closer, man. You said silence, and I'll say waiting. Because think about it. When I first started to talk this morning, weren't you waiting to hear if I had anything to say? Right? Well, when you talk to your spouse or your children or people in the street, they wait to butt in, wait to have their turn, wait to hear what they want to hear, don't hear what they don't want to hear, only hear what they expect to hear, wait for you to go away. No. Let me tell you something about active listening. There are 4 levels, and you can blow it at any level. Number 1, you got to be open and unbiased to be a good listener. Do you know that I haven't taught a course in the last 8 years where anybody came and wanted to listen to me? I have negative audiences all the time. You're somewhat of a slight exception. Let me tell you, most of the time I walk and tell me something. Right? They have to be there. They think they know how to communicate. You got to be open and unbiased to be a good listener. And most of you came here this morning, I know it's a bunch of crap, right? I've heard it all before. There's nothing in this course. It's a bunch of crap. Let me tell you something. You don't have to come open. Whose responsibility is it to open you up today? It is mine. You know why most communication courses are, in fact, a bunch of fluff? Because they make a crucial blunder in basic assumption. They assume that the burden of listening lies with you. It does not. Your only job today was to show up. Be here. Whose job is it to get you to listen? It's mine. It is always the sender's. All right, so teachers, for example, that tell me, well, I have a bad class this semester. You know what my response is? You must be doing some seriously bad teaching, because I've never had a bad class. I make people what I want them to be by the way in which I deal with them, and that's what we're talking about here, tactical communication, and I'll define that later. Right now, I'm going to try to open you up by showing there is something indeed that you can take home with you and make you survive a little bit more skillfully in this world. Secondly, let's say you had been open and unbiased. Then you have to hear literally what somebody says to you. Have you ever misheard your spouse? Gee, I'm sorry, I thought you said. Now, even if you hear literally, you're only halfway home because unfortunately, and this is the truth, you've got to interpret what you hear because right? If you're going to act appropriately. Now, there's number 4, act, but the problem, the fly in the coffee, is number 3. Because here's the first street truth you need to understand. People never say what they mean. They are incapable of saying what they mean because words are only a code system for meaning. They only stand for meaning, all right? The very best you can hope for is that words and meaning would be co-equivalent. But the real truth is the more under the influence you are, the farther words go out from what they mean. I'm going to put on a survival diagram. This is the most important diagram you'll ever see in communication. You make a note of this one. When people speak, they want to express a meaning. Let's call it meaning 1. And in order to do that, they have to choose words, okay? Now, the more under the influence a person might be under, liquor, drugs, and rage, just drugs, just liquor, just rage, anger, fear, depression, ignorance, even tiredness tonight after a long day. You're going to go home. What you say to your spouse will not be identical to what you mean. All right? This is the number 1 thing to understand. For example, I'll give you a police example and then I'll give you a civilian example. I used to answer a lot of burglary calls. And I knocked on the door one night with a deputy that was out. I was out watching him. He had not been through this training. And we go to the door about 10:30 at night, knock on the door flies open. Here's what the deputy got hit with. Where the hell have you people been? He said, I called 3 hours ago. 3 hours, Jack, and you're just showing up now. What kind of thing is that? That's a bunch of crap. Let me tell you something. I pay your taxes, Jack. I expect better response than this. This is outrageous. I know what you're doing out there, right? Coffee and donuts, right? Eating some serious donuts and coffee, right? Playing around, right? Writing a few parking tickets and speeding tickets when in fact, looky here, my house is stripped. What are you going to do about that, sucker? Now I quote him. Now what do you think the deputy said who had been untrained? See, he didn't think he had to take that. So he said that. He said, hey, I don't know when you called, sir, and frankly, I don't care, but I'm here now. If you want some help, I'll give you some help. But you want to stand there and give me some verbal abuse, I'll go 10-8. I'll go back into service. You handle your own problem. And he started to walk away. Well, the guy went berserk, right? What would a great communicator do? A Magic Johnson, a pro. See, I'm talking about a pro, not an amateur. Right? What happens to Magic Johnson, sir, when you double team him? See, normally he just plays the greatest basketball in the world, Larry Bird or a Magic Johnson. But what if you put him under some pressure and double team him? Does he score more points? Yes, he does. Oh, no, he plays serious ball then. See, you double team a Magic Johnson, you got yourself a problem. Because then he'll just bury your team. Isn't that true? See, pros just get better under pressure. My belief is that the more verbal abuse you give me, the better I'm going to be, the more tactical I'm going to be, right? Not the worse. See, amateurs have good days and bad days. Well, I had a bad day. Well, you're not paid to have a bad day. You're paid to have a good day. Now, here's how, look at this. What would a Magic Johnson of communication have said? Let me show you what a pro could have said. All right? You get in my face that way. So where the hell have you people been? I go, whoa, listen to me, sir. I appreciate that. Remember, I appreciate anything. I appreciate that, sir, but listen to me. Listen to me, sir. I'm here now. And I'll tell you another thing. You're right about it. It's a jungle out there. Now, look, I'm here now, sir. Here's what I need to do. I need to come in your house, sir. I need to see where these people got in and where they got out, okay? And while you take me around showing me that, I want you, sir, to be thinking very carefully about what, in fact, is missing. Because when I'm done with my investigation, we're going to sit over at this kitchen table and we're going to do something called a police report. And let me tell you about that. That doesn't have to be meaningless paperwork, as it too often is. You know, our department's pretty good. We get 35 to 40% of this stuff back over time, some of it even in usable condition. If I have a good specific report, sir, you have some chance of getting it back. And I'll tell you what, before I leave, I'm an expert in prevention. I'll be glad to take a couple of minutes. I'm busy. You pointed that out. But I'm never too busy, sir, that I can't, give you a couple of helpful suggestions about how you might prevent this from happening again. May I come in, sir? Sure. And I'm in any house in America. He sure is right. Whoosha! I'm in any house in America, right? Whoosha! Even if you don't speak English, if you don't speak English, I got a problem. But I know you speak English because you hit me upside the head with English, right? Now, let me ask you something. Do you understand that what the guy initially meant, where the heck have you people been, right? That's what he said. That's not what he meant. What he meant were 4 things, not one of which did he say. Number 1, he means, I need some help. Number 2, he means, can I get any of my stuff back? Gee. Number 3, he means, how can I prevent this from happening again? It's a jungle out there. And number 4, and perhaps most pervasively, ladies and gentlemen, what he means is, what do you do with the feeling of having been raped? You ever been burglarized? Anybody in here ever been burglarized? Am I right when I say it's an unforgettable existential event? You feel dirty. It must be closest thing. Violated is that's it, exactly the right word, violated, right? Some people even move out of their homes. Now, did you notice that my response hit every one of those? You need some help, I'm going to do that. Now look here, you realize that the divorce courts are filled with people misunderstood this point? Maybe you've been there, like I have, right? You get tense with your spouse, you get tense, you don't know what to do, you're not really skillful under pressure, and so you just draw down on her with the equivalent of verbal deadly force, which is something like this. Well, if you don't like it, let's get a divorce, bitch, all right? And she, not being a wimp or you wouldn't have married her in the first place, right, snaps back at you by saying, fine, fine, I'll see you in court. Right? And there you are the next day, each pulling papers for something neither one of you wanted. Now, how many times does that happen? Nah, Never react to what people say. You want the bottom line? Never react to their words, because their words are symptomatic of a problem way behind here. Right? See, if you're raising children, your children are only going to be telling you what they want and demand and desires. Like hostage takers used to make demands on me. I want this and I want that. Well, look, in raising your children, you got the same problem. If you give your children everything they demand and want, you're going to turn them into mean, nasty little yuppies. Right? Mean, nasty little yuppies, right? And you'll be working 2 and 3 jobs to do that. And when you die early, as you surely will, they'll turn to easy money, drugs, and crime, because you fed the furnace of desire. You must not do that. Here's the bottom line. You don't want to give your kids what they demand, right? Because they don't know what they need. They only know what they want. So the crucial thing between words and meanings is like demands versus needs. Right? If your kid demands a brand new road bike, maybe you haven't got $1,500 to buy him one. Why don't you buy him a second-hand one and be home to help him ride it? Go on a ride with him. Give him a bow. Be there to take him hunting. You know why the gangs are powerful in America? And they're not going to go away because of smash units on the police departments. You know why? Because there's nobody home at 3 p.m. in the afternoon in America. We're all out there yuppie-eying it, trying to buy our Porsches, Jaguars, and BMWs. And there's nobody home in America, but there's always somebody home at the gang. There's always somebody home at the gang. And the people are either out there dirt poor, scraping to make a living, or they're out there trying to do what they think they want to do, and there's nobody home for their children. All right, now that's the bottom line of communication. Right? And I learned that from hostage negotiation. I'll finish it up with this point. I had a guy one time in Kansas City said to me, he was holding a cup behind, he said, I want $1 million in an airplane. And I said to him, yes, sir. So do I. He said, but let me tell you something. Look out the window, sir. You see those people dressed in green? They're the SWAT team. It's not the police chief, that's the SWAT team. They're here for one reason, sir. They don't like you. Now, I work for these people, and they're not going to give me $1 million in an airplane. What do you think your chances are? Let's talk about something else. See, these guys are called shooters. They sleep with their rifles. Right as I speak, they have perspiration running down the forehead and into their eyes as they sight in this room. I suggest we forget about the $1 million in an airplane. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about what it's going to take. All right? Put something in your pocket. Get you out of here tonight. Maybe have that cup of coffee tomorrow. All right? That cup of coffee tomorrow. Be with your lady tomorrow night. Let's talk about what it's going to take. Because I'll go back and tell them you want $1 million in an airplane. You know what they're going to do to me? Set me to one side, and then they're coming after you. That's not the police chief. He cares about PR. These people want it done quick. Talk to me. I'll help you out. See, working together, you and I, we might find something that you can get. And they'll give me these demands. See, much like raising children, right? Divorce courts, just like hostage negotiation. You got to never react to what people say. For what they say is not what they mean. You want to be a good communicator? Learn to deflect the words as the ancient samurai deflected the spear and work back and address what they mean or what they need. That will make you a more accomplished professional. You'll have a better life. You'll have less stress at home and less violence throughout your career. And I'd like that for you because I came up the hard way, and I'm telling you that's the easier way to go. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. You know, the second survival truth you need to know is very interesting, and again, most people don't know it. Let's say you're X and you're talking to Y. Could be your spouse, could be your kid, could be somebody in business. Every time you talk to somebody, it looks like 2 people there. If just you and I, sir, are talking, there's 6 different identities clashing for dominance. You need to know what they are. Number 1, there's the real self of George Thompson and the real self of you. Your first name again, sir, was? Bill. Bill, okay. There's 2. Now, this is who you are from where you come from. You know, your belief systems, your value systems, the way you were raised, okay? And that is a whole area of possible C4 plastic explosive. Because at any time, somebody can say something that sets you off, or you can say something that will set someone else off, okay, Bill? So there's the real self, which we really don't know that well, but in my longer course, I teach how you can be in touch better with yourself, those triggers and those buttons that people like to pull and push, okay? So not being a psychologist, however, I'll get off these 2. Let's go to the next 2. Then there's the self as I see myself and the self as you see yourself. Now, when I'm working as a professional, it's crucial that I see myself as a professional and that I have a certain pride and dignity, okay? A pride and dignity in looking and sounding good. See, one of the reasons that I don't badmouth people, put people down, and racially epithet people is that I don't like myself when I do it. See, there's no call in America for that, but I'll tell you another thing. It makes you look bad, and I like to look good. Not enough to be good. You got to look good. So I have a high vision whenever I deal with people on the street or in any kind of business or personal relationship. I value the way I come across. So it's important that we raise the expectations of our children and of ourselves, that we want to look good and sound good, okay? Now, Bill, you have your way of looking at yourself, and I can tell you one thing, it's always more positive than anyone else's, okay? And so this is another reason I say never put people down. See, there's no call for putting people down. There's no culture in the United States of America in which putting a man down or a woman down does not occasion a brawl or a fight. Now, those are two. I say leave his identity alone. Never put a person down. Don't humiliate your children. Don't humiliate anybody else, okay? But then the fly in the coffee here is this one. You see, there's also a George Thompson as he sees himself. Let's say I'm dealing with you on the streets as a police officer, and I see myself, level 2, as handling you firm but fair professionally. You, on the other hand, Bill, see me, that's level 3 under X, you see me as pushy and aggressive. What's the real truth? We know a lot of people think it's somewhere in between, but it isn't somewhere in between. See, if you think that I'm pushy and aggressive, what feedback are you going to give me? Feedback based on how I see it or how you see it?
The way I see it.
And exactly. So what am I going to have to deal with right here in River City if not that? Now, what if I don't see it? What if I miss it in the eyes, the body language, or the proxemics? Can I make a bad mistake with you, lose a sale? Yes. Can I get hit upside the head? Yes. Can I have a subject flee on me in the streets? Yeah. You know, one of the great survival skills for officer safety, and I stress this when I teach cops, all officer safety starts with your ability to see yourself as you're being seen. That is true in any communication, though, okay? And verbal judo will enable you to read people better, because like the Indian taught me, you must read a trail. So you've got to read a verbal encounter. You got to understand where the man is coming from, right? You've got to kind of keep calm inside and redirect. And you can't do that, and there is no training in America, short of what I do. There's no training in America to teach you how to read yourself as you are, in fact, performing before others. So, the second street truth is that the most important identity you have out there, at home or on the streets, is how you're seen by others. All right? And we've got to develop an antenna for that, and verbal judo will enable you to do that. Turn to number 3, the third street truth. Remember, the first was the opposite of talking is not listening but waiting, and you've got to make people better listeners by technique. The second, self-esteem by other. Now the third. You're X, you're sending a message to Y. You're 100% correct about that which you are speaking. Doesn't have any influence on this person at all. We know from research that content, all right, facts, data, proof, and evidence is only 7 to 10% of your possible impact on another. Being right don't make it so. Facts don't speak for themselves in a court of law, never did, right? Being right, how many times have you been right with your spouse, yet lost the argument? How many times have you been right with your children, yet lost the argument? How many times have you been right with your supervisor and yet lost the argument? You got to be right, because if you're not, you lose credibility, and if you lose credibility, you lose people's belief, and then your history anyway. But no, you've got to be right, but being right doesn't cut a lot of ice. So in persuasion, which is what I teach, what does cut serious ice? Let me tell you, voice. Notice I put it in quotation marks. Voice is 33 to 40% of your power over people. 33 to 40. Now, unfortunately, it's not how you hear yourself. See, most of us hear ourselves pretty positively. Now, this is your verbal personality as heard by the other. And I'll tell you something. It is and can be destructive. There are 4 elements to voice. In my longer course, I get to all 4. Tone is the first one, and we'll talk about that. Pace, pitch, and modulation are the others. But take a look at tone. This is the 4-letter word in America. I said it's the 4-letter word in America, right? This word is more destructive than any word in the English language, right? And it will always be defined, right, as your attitude expressed. And that will always be defined as the word or phrase that people can add to the sentence that you in fact say to them. Right? Hey, you, come here. And you hear the word jackass at the end of that, right? Or, lady, it's right behind you, that store you're looking for. Big, dumb idiot. See, it comes naturally. Now, I didn't call her an idiot. I didn't call her an idiot, did I? But that's what she heard. And I'll tell you something. This business here leads us to the first street principle that verbal judo teaches you. It's role versus voice. Role, now, put an S on that, is what you do. You play 100 roles a day. 100 rolls a day, right? This is the what? The voice, on the other hand, is the delivery system. The delivery system. Here's what we know. Whenever what you do goes in one direction, but your voice cuts back and denies it, people believe the voice. You do, I do, everybody does. In an example I used before, cops. Imagine a police officer who's had a bad day, pulls his car off, right, in some kind of empty shopping lot. He's sitting there trying to play the role of report writer. Okay, he's trying to write his reports. Right? And somebody suddenly comes up and beeps the horn. Beep, 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 beep. Officer, officer. Right? And he looks up and he says, yes, which way to the stadium? Quick, I'm late. And he says, but ma'am, you're on the street. You see it down there? You can't miss it. You see the oval? You're going to run right into it if you're not careful. Now, he didn't call her an idiot, but the words big idiot come right after that. And you remember the three kinds of people we talked about? If she's a nice person, she just goes away feeling bad. She'll take the barb, thank you, and she'll drive off thinking, geez, why can't they treat me better? I don't deserve this. But you remember the difficult woman, don't you? If she's a difficult old lady, you know what you're going to hear. The next words out of her mouth are, because she's not going to take that barb. She's going to say, wait a minute, officer, I pay your taxes. I don't have to put up with that. Let me tell you something. You got yourself a problem. And she's right out of the car. She's in your face. Who's your supervisor? I say, I want your supervisor's name, right? And you've got some verbal warfare by the door of your car, and you've got a problem. And if she's one of those those four-eyed people I'm talking about, the two-faced individuals, she'll take the barb and say the same thing the nice person does. Thank you. But then she'll drive to the ball game. And now she's going to sit on that barb for 2 hours. And while she sits on it, it is going to be inflating her with adrenaline. And she thinks exactly like a difficult person, except for the first sentence. The first sentence will be like this. I should have said something. See, there's your wimp. I should have said it. She didn't say it. I pay that man's taxes. That's not the first time I've been mistreated by these people. By the time she comes out of that game, that 80-pound lady is now 450 pounds of adrenaline, right? And she's so upset she can't even go home. She can't go to the party. She can't go anywhere except home, actually. And she'll go home, and barely squeezing through the door. What is she going to be reaching for? A phone. Or worse yet, pen and paper, and you've got a Scud missile on the way to your desk, officer. Nice going. You see, the point is the officer didn't know how to do it. Because, you see, the woman had thrown him into a tourist guide position. Can you tell me? And he didn't want to do it. Did he, by the way, perform the role? Interestingly enough, he did. But did the voice say he wanted to or didn't want to? Did not want to. So the lady goes away not only feeling not served, but angry. No. The crucial principle, in fact, is that voice must lie. If we had more boardroom, I could make this clear, but voice must lie. Because the bottom line is voice must harmonize. You've got to harmonize your voice. Harmony. Example, the same officer who was a pro, who had used verbal judo or knew verbal judo. See, verbal judo will enable you to combine role and voice in ways no one else can. Same officer sitting there, beep, 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 officer, and he looks up, yes, which way to the stadium, quick. And instead of looking up and growling, he looks up smiling. Puts on a face, to meet the faces that he meets. And he looks at her and he says, ma'am, you're in luck. Back your car up. If you look carefully down, that oval, now that is the stadium. And by the way, you're late. So the best way to go is in the main gate, take an immediate right, park there. See, I know my beat, I know my area. Right? You have a nice evening and thanks for stopping by. Off she goes. Now I can turn to myself or my partner and go, idiot, later. You see, voice must lie. The point being, if I can't do that, I can't dance. I'll only stumble. The great art of verbal judo is the ability to make the voice lie. See, the voice is, if you're a contact professional, your voice not only can lie, it will. You'll sound calm when not calm. You'll sound pleasant and helpful when you don't feel like it. Right? You'll not be snapping at people. Now that's one role right there. Role and voice harmonized, then I can say to myself, I danced when I could have stumbled. See, I don't even have to feel any tension. Because I can snap at the old lady once she's left, right, with my partner there, right, so I can get it out. I'm not going to take it home, but I can feel good because once again, on my worst day, I handled her well, and that's what I'm hired to do. I am hired, am I not, to be a representative, right, to deal with difficult people under pressure, and I can feel good about that. And that's the first thing. If you can't make the role and voice with your children, right, if your job is to redirect their behavior, raise their motivation in some way, you've got to keep that irritation out of your voice and apply the right words for the right person for the right job. All right? You put a person down, the moment they hear you putting them down, they turn you off and you've lost it. And you've lost your power. See, verbal judo enables you to develop power where other kinds of natural language are disastrous. cause you a bunch of problems. You know, if role and voice must harmonize, so also must your voice and your other nonverbals. Voice is 33 to 40%, yes, of your impact on another. But other nonverbals, by which I mean, to make it simple, body language, that's your facial expressions, the way you move your hands when you talk, the way you walk, the way you wear your clothes, whatever that is, speaks very loudly. And proxemics, that's the study of space. And in my longer police course particularly, I do a great deal of work teaching officers how to manipulate space on the street so that they up their power, all right, so that they can generate voluntary compliance. Now, obviously, whenever voice goes in one direction and your other nonverbals, like the way you stand around, right, or the way you walk towards somebody, or the way you look, if those ever counter the voice, people believe the other nonverbals. So that's what's wrong partly with calm down. Not only the words are wrong, but the face is wrong. You understand? So we know that to be a pro, as in role versus voice, we said no, they must harmonize. So clearly same. Voice, the great pro can harmonize voice and other nonverbals. Again, harmony is the principle, the bottom line, okay? Now, here's the point. Let's say your role is to calm somebody down. Does your voice have to be calming? Yes. So the voice has to harmonize with the role. Now, what about your other nonverbals? You can't be getting into people's face this way, right? So the voice must, right, find confirmation from the other nonverbals, or the body language has to harmonize as well. Body language must harmonize with voice, body language and voice with role. When you do that, you're of one piece. Now, here's the frightening thing. If you took the lowest of voice, 33%, and the most of body language, which we know to be 60%, and added it up, you get 93%. 93%, ladies and gentlemen, of your success with your children, your spouses, or your professional life doesn't have the slightest thing to do with what you do, but how you deliver it. The delivery style. Again, something we never teach in the United States of America school system, but we should. All right? Now, 93%, therefore, is delivery. And that's what verbal judo can enable you to do. Up your delivery style significantly, and it can do it overnight. Now, what is verbal judo? Well, it's not verbal karate. You know, karate as a fighting system is an attacking, kicking, striking out, whoosh-ah, as if with the side of a calloused hand. Have you ever snapped at a spouse? You ever snapped at your children? You ever snapped at an employee or someone out here in the hallway? Sure. And every time you do, it does make you feel good. See, the thing is that verbal karate is very seductive. It makes you feel good. Well, I told him off, you bet I did. Now, I was brought up to tell people off, and I was an expert at it. And I stand before you now, and I will tell you the truth. It has never worked. All it does is make me feel good for a couple hours, but it burns bridges that I cannot repair. It loses credibility that I can almost never get back. That use of the natural language, you know, when you're angry, the moment you let words rise readily to your lips, you will create the greatest speech you'll ever live to regret. And if we could change that, if you could just hold from snapping at somebody, all right, because that's an unprofessional thing to do. It's an expression of your feeling rather than a judicious choice of words to solve the problem. Keep the goal in mind. That's what judo teaches you. The goal. See, verbal judo is a different thing altogether. The word judo comes from Japanese, meaning gentle or flexible way. Ju means gentle, do means habit of mind. It is a habit of mind, in fact, a way of life. And I like the meaning, the gentle way, because as a police officer, that's the way we're supposed to use words on the street and the kinds of force we're supposed to use. Same thing is true with your family. You don't want to overuse your words, humiliate people, because you know what? Verbal abuse is the #1 abuse in this country. It sinks deeper and festers longer than any other kind of abuse. The frightening thing about, right, verbal karate is that it destroys people. How many of you have forgotten humiliation? Is that something easily forgotten? I don't think people ever forget it. I know I haven't forgotten the times I've been verbally humiliated. So take a break from that easy way and learn the professional way. #1, I like the meaning of the word, gentle. Secondly, it's based, as are all martial arts, on redirection of energy. I know that gentleman in the hat, he's an expert in, what was it, sir? What kind of karate? Kempo and other kinds of karate? Right? That's fine. That's fine as a fighting system. Right? Even that's based on redirection. Everything is based on redirection. You know, there's no fighting system based on confrontation. So why do we teach it? Why do we raise our kids to confront rather than to redirect, the greatest of all principles. And we do it because it fits with the judo principle of what I call the triple ME theory. Maximum effectiveness, maximum efficiency, minimum effort. When I train people in physical judo, Bill, I train them to use their physical energies with maximum effectiveness, minimum energy. Why push and shove when I can just go, Sha! Use your power against you. Right? Same thing verbally. You don't want to stir your people up. You snap at your employer, you've got yourself a problem. You've got to go back the next day and do an impossible human action. It's called apology. Forget that word. That doesn't exist in the English language. The best you can hope for is apology. Spell that P-O-L-O-G-Y. You're going to have to go back and go through the motions. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I snapped. I didn't mean it, and I shouldn't have said it. All of which, of course, are lies. Right? And the worst yet is the way he accepts it. Your boss, if you snap to your boss, I'll show you what he'll do. He'll clasp his hands behind him and engage in what I call the famous rocking horse. He'll rock back and forth like this, and he'll say, oh, yes, it's all forgotten, oh, yes. I thank you for coming in, oh, yes. Oh, yes. But what does oh, yes mean? Too often it means, oh, no. I don't think anybody forgets it. And it can mark your career, stall your career, and destroy your life. Be very careful. Another thing about verbal judo is I picked it over other kinds of fighting systems because it's a grappling art. Think about it for a minute. It's like American wrestling, right? In judo, as long as I keep my hands, I don't have to grab people hard, but if I keep in touch with you, right? If you push, I pull. If you pull, I push. I harmonize my motions with you, okay? That's the essence of martial arts, okay? Now that translates to that word we talked about earlier, empathy. Empathy. In communication, the moment you lose touch with that person, the moment you stop thinking like that person, you are in deep trouble. The moment you stop thinking like your spouse, you're headed for the divorce court. The moment you stop thinking like your children, you've got yourself a problem. In other words, I teach the art of mastery through adaptation. And verbal judo will enable you, all right, to master others, right, by first adjusting to them. Okay, adapting to them, much like the chameleon. Become who you have to handle the scene. Now that's fine theory you're sitting there thinking, oh yes, what does it look like in practice? Well, that's what I'm going to show you. You remember that car stop I didn't handle well the first time I became a cop? I snapped at the man to get out, and he said, I ain't going to get out, right? And I didn't do it well. Well, about a week later, having been warned by the chief of police to do it better, but not telling me how to do it, I stopped another car. Same thing. About 2:30 in the morning, car had gone through a stop sign, wouldn't pull over. After a while, got him over, got up there, shined my light in the car. Here's a bunch of Mary Jane all over the floorboards. So I thought, well, I got him too. So I just kind of snapped at him. I said, you, sir, step out. And he, much like the first guy, said, I ain't getting out of this car, officer. And I went, oh, no. You know, inside I went, oh, no. Here we go again, the same guy. Now watch this. I'm going to put a diagram on the board, which is the essence of verbal judo diagrammed, okay? Watch this. V1 stands for voice. A1 will stand for the appeal. I'm going to give you the police example, and then I'm going to anchor it at home with your children and leave you with what I call the 5 points, the 5-step hard style of persuasion, the 5 points of how to get people to do what you want them to do. It is the heart of everything we know about persuasion. You can use it in 100 different ways. Watch this. Voice 1 and appeal 1. I had given this man a verbal command. Okay, now I'm going to put in after the word command, ego. Because what voice did you hear when I snapped at him? You, sir, step out. Idiot, jackass is right at the end. See, so I had revealed my irritation. Of course, I should have asked him politely, sir, would you step out, please? Didn't occur to me. But if I had and he were difficult, would he have gotten out? No. What do difficult say? You know, what do difficult people say the first time? Yeah, why? What for, officer? You know, why are you stopping me? So make a note. You ask 10 people in a row, all of whom are difficult drivers. You stop 10 cars in a row, they're all difficult drivers. Nobody gets out the first time you ask him. I don't care if you ask him politely or not. They won't do it. So this guy said, I ain't getting out of the car, officer. And I thought, oh, no, because I had the police chief right here in my left shoulder, you know. And I had my anger right here in the right, and they were battling. And so I found a thing to do. I had no name for it. I'm going to ask you to give it a name, or come close to giving it a name. I did this. Whoosha! Voice 2 and appeal number 2. I'm going to change my voice and appeal. Watch this. Here's what I said again. He says, I ain't getting out, officer. I said, sir, listen to me, listen to me. To the right of your leg, sir, seems to be some marijuana, and there seems to be a half-empty bottle of Jim Beam whiskey, is it, sir? Sir, I need to have you step out, okay? Let me tell you something. That constitutes right there an open bottle charge, sir, and I have no choice under the law but to have you step out, because that is contraband, or looks like it, okay? And for your safety, sir, and mine, I need to have you step out. Would you do that for me, please? Now, what did I do then that I forgot to do the first time?
Redirect.
Well, that's what it ends up, redirect. I asked, and I did more than ask him. What did I do? You know what? Yeah, I changed my voice, but I also changed the nature of the appeal. I gave him a reason. The second, after empathy, the second most powerful word in the English language is the word context. C-O-N-T-E-X-T. C-O-N in Latin means with. And text means what it means in English, book, with understanding. Do you know what research shows? I'm talking about research on the street. How many people would you guess? Let me ask you, because you're from a variety of walks of life. How many people out of 10 difficult people do you think would now cooperate with me, having given them a ground to do so? Explained myself. How many do you think out of 10? 7 is exactly right. 8 isn't far, depending on where you are. In the most difficult communities in this country, 6 to 7. In the country club America, maybe 8 or 9. But I deal with the hard-nosed people. They're my kind of people. Remember, make a note. 7 out of 10 people will do what you want if you just explain why. Now, let me tell you why that's true. It's easy to say that. Let me show you why. Let me ask you something. Your name, sir, again was?
Eddie.
Eddie, let me ask you something. The second time, did I sound calmer to you?
Yes, you did.
Did I sound clearer?
Certainly.
Did I sound more in control of myself in the situation?
Yes, you did.
In short, did I sound more professional?
Yes, you did.
You see what I mean by having power and influence? Verbal judo gives you power and influence over people because it controls the way you use language. Now, that's why you're going to be more cooperative. You know what? Underneath the word ego, when I'm teaching cops, I'll put the phrase personal face. Personal face. There's an old street principle that says, never show somebody your personal face. See, George Thompson stays at home. Officer Thompson walks the streets, right? Or if I'm working for Nordstrom's, or if I'm working for a retail outfit, right? Or I'm working anywhere you want to name, George Thompson stays at home, and whoever, Representative Thompson, steps out. You understand? My personal face is showing my ego, my irritation, my disgust, my anger, whatever it might be. Now watch this. When I set context, you know what I did? I got rid of ego. And I provided a ground. You know what it's like to ground an electrical appliance, right? I provided grounds. Do you know that in all the 102 cultures I told you about, there's not a single one, I say there's not a single one, that a man could not step out of a car and maintain his personal face at this point, because I have not challenged him. No one would laugh at him if he said, oh, hell, I don't need that kind of trouble, officer. I'm out. All right, I understand. I'm out. There's no way you'll be teased if you get out here. So what I've done is provide a ground. See, that's my professionalism. I've done some research on what constitutes police complaints, okay? And then I went and did some research on why teachers get complaints, all right? And they're the same. 100% of the complaints that people get in this country are usually based on their attitude or their tone expressed. We've already talked about that. 80% of those, however, also have in them major commentary about the fact the person didn't tell me why. Well, he stopped me and wouldn't tell me why. Made me sit on the curb and wouldn't tell me why, right? Gave me this grade and there's nothing on it, all right? Nothing on the paper, no explanation, wouldn't talk to me. I'll tell you what, you want to anger people, don't explain. You want to calm and direct and have power over people, explanation is the most powerful thing in the world. Short of empathy. Now watch this. My guy was truly difficult because my guy didn't care about the open bottle. You know what he said? He said, I don't know nothing about that bottle, Jack. Now there's another thing that used to get me angry. I don't like to be called Jack, but I let it drift. See, my name's George. I don't like Jack, but I let it drift. He said, I don't know nothing about that bottle, Jack. He said, I took a bunch of guys to a party last night. Sam and the boys sat in the back. They drink that kind of whiskey. It's not my bottle, not my problem. I don't have to get out. Empathy for a minute. Remember, from the other person's point of view, is that a fairly decent argument? I mean, is that a reasonable argument? Not my bottle, I shouldn't be penalized for it? Sure. From my particular professional role as police officer, that's a bunch of you-know-what. But from his point of view, it makes some sense. So watch what I did. Not knowing what to do, I just did this. Whoosha! Command him another way. Whoosha! Voice 3 and appeal 3. Tell me what I did here. I said, sir, listen to me. That's an interesting argument your bottle is saying. Let me tell you something. The law, sir, doesn't make that argument. Let me tell you what the law says, okay? The law says you be in car, bottle be rolling around in car. Whoosha! You are responsible. Now, sir, may not even be fair, but just so now listen to me. I'd like to think you'd step out and work with me, because for your safety, sir, I need to have you out. Then I'll take a look at that bottle. And that way, sir, you're going to be able to. Right now, sir, it looks like you might be able to go home tonight. Put your feet up with the family, right? Eat at your own table, sir, and sleep in your own bed and go to work in the morning. This problem's going to be long gone. But, sir, I want to stress another thing. If you don't cooperate, sir, then the law says you have to come with us. Put your feet up with us. Eat with us. Sleep with us. Sir, that's called an arrest, and I don't see any reason to make an arrest. That's a lot of paperwork for me. Think of towing your car. You want that nice car towed? Think of the dents they'll accidentally put on down there at the yard. These things never come back the way they should, okay? I don't want that for you, sir. Would you work with me and step out? Now, you know what I did then? I gave him options. The third most powerful word in persuasion. Not threats. You know what's interesting? Hang on to this because you can take it out. There's no difference between an option and a threat in terms of content. All I'm telling this man is what? Bill, go home and go to jail, right? Well, now, let me ask you, why didn't I just say, you want to go home and go to jail? Well, that's not really a threat, but it sure is ineffective persuasion, because option A, go home, and option B, go to jail, sound identical. And if he's brain damaged, he might make the wrong choice. See, I don't want him to do that. In other words, the art of persuasion lies in buttering the bread one way and making it the other side of the piece of bread not look any good. You understand what I'm talking about? Getting people's minds hooked. I call it verbal come-alongs. This is a verbal come-along. This is a 5-step verbal come-along. You know what my guy did? He laughed. And he said to me, oh, hell, he says, I don't need that kind of trouble, officer. He said, I'm out of there. And he stepped out, and here in one sentence is the essence of verbal judo. He stepped out on the ground that I had built for him to stand on. Look at this. Every other communication course in the country has a lot of easy things, like never back a person into a corner. Oh, yeah. Always allow a person a way out of a corner. Oh, yeah. Anybody ever tell you how to do it? I not only tell you how to do it, I just performed it. In other words, depending on your delivery system, the way you put it, you allow him to walk out. If you threaten him, he can go nowhere. Right? If I had said, hey, you don't get out, we'll take you to jail, Jackie. Well, come on then, take me to jail. And now you got to fight, and then we'll blame him later saying he's a difficult person, when in fact, I was the ineffective communicator. Here's the shocking truth of this. 9 out of 10 people on the streets, you know, if they work on the streets, they're going to work at home. 9 out of 10 people will do what you say if you can make it an option. All right? Make it an option. If, on the other hand, you make it a threat, 10 out of 10 people will fight you because they have to. See, there's no culture in which this man couldn't step out and still save his personal face. Here's the point. If I maintain my professional face, what do I allow the citizen to maintain? What's his personal face? He doesn't have to be pushed. He doesn't have to look like he's some kind of wuss doing it because he's afraid. He can do it because I've given him some dignity and respect. Remember, respect. Now, let's deal with the guy that doesn't get out, like this kid that won't do what you say no matter what happens. Let's say, and I've had him not get out, let's say you get a guy who says, I'm not getting out, officer, why don't you just get to it, because I ain't getting out of this car. You know, until this course, cops had no other alternative but to take him out. But now notice something. If you take him out now, is he prepared for you? Does he think you're going to take him out? Yeah. I got something for you, and this has been tested across the country. There is a single sentence in law enforcement that's the most powerful in the world, and it may be the most powerful at home as well. Watch this. Whoosha! Voice 4. An appeal, number 4. I'm going to call it confirmation. I am going to confirm that the words I hear and the meanings are as close to being identical as possible. Remember I said earlier that words go way out and meanings stay behind? But you know, some people mean very much what they say. Watch the sentence. First, watch me send it. Watch this. If you said that to me, Eddie, I'm not getting out of the car, why don't you do something about it? Whew, sir. Is there anything, sir, I could say or do at this time to get you to work with me? I'd sure like to think we could do that. End of quotes. Now, did you see any threat in my voice or my body language?
No, not at all.
No. And isn't it my responsibility professionally to generate voluntary compliance? So my words are completely sincere. Sir, is there anything I could say or do at this time to get your cooperation? I'd like to think we could do that. Now, if I've had a partner, Bill, let's say that you've been my partner on the other side of the car. We'll still use the police example. When you hear me go to the sentence, sir, anything I can say or do to get you to cooperate, you know one thing he does not. You know step 5. Step 5, unless there's some opening here that I can use and continue to persuade him, step 5 is act before he finishes his next sentence. For example, if he says, yeah, that's right, I ain't getting shot, he's out and cuffed. Who's the surprised person? You are. You, when you hear the sentence, have already begun to move and take new cover based on however you and I may take a person out. We call it contact and cover and police work. Now watch this. Watch this. Number 1, nowhere here do I get upset because throughout the 5-step process, I know exactly where I am. right? Remember that Mark Dickey in Long Beach, when Don Jackson was giving him that hassle down in Long Beach, what I heard in his voice, you know, he kept telling Don Jackson, put your hands up, put your hands up, put your hands up. He kept repeating. What I hear in his voice, he may have thought he sounded professional and so on. I heard fear and indecision. And I think Mark Dickey, like many of us, right, don't know what to do when people look us in the eyes. They ain't gonna do it! We usually end up repeating or making it worse. Now, number one, you have you're either, well, you can only be 4 places. You're either in the asking process, sure, would you cooperate with me? Ain't gonna do it! Telling them why process, providing a ground for it being reasonable, giving them their options, and there are always options. And finally, confirming, okay? Now, in police work, imagine if I had to haul him out. Number one, he is not ready, so I take him by surprise, so I'm safer, and so is he, because there won't be a big fight. Number two, can I defend it in court? You bet I can, because I had to go to empty-hand control, Your Honor, because words failed and I can prove it, all right? I got no voluntary compliance, Your Honor, but I sure tried. And look at the last sentence I said to him. Sir, is there anything I could say or do to get you to work with me? I'd like to think so. And I would like to think so. I don't believe it for an instant, but I like to think so. All right? Now, let's put this at home. You think this is about police? You know where all the violence in America starts and ends? At home. Example. Suppose I told my son Taylor, hey, it's Friday night. Take out the trash. I'm in the asking process, right? Number one, voice one. Hey, Taylor, take out the trash before you go to that party. And he's 17. Suppose he says to me, hey, I haven't got time for trash tonight. Why don't you do it? You know, most parents go from asking to what? Threats. They go over to number three. They wouldn't think of turning in an option. Hey, you don't take out the trash. You're in your room all weekend, Jack. That's where most parents go. Because when they meet resistance, they lash out with their full power. Always a mistake. Watch this. Taylor says to me, I'm not going to take out the trash, Dad. I got too much to do. Whoa, whoosh-ah, right down to number two. Taylor, listen to me. Listen to me. Didn't you and I agree 7 or 8 months ago that every Friday night before you went out, you would have the trash out by curb? Remember the agreement? When trash cans out by curb, Taylor out the party. No trash cans out, no Taylor out. Didn't we agree on that? Why don't you just take the cans out and keep your word? I'd like to think you'd do that for me. And most kids probably would. They'd laugh and do it. But let's say they don't. Now, I haven't got time for that, Dad. Why don't you take it out? You know, you're not paying me nothing. The heck with that. I don't have to do this. Now, most parents then move to threats. It takes a real pro to go up here. Options. It might sound like this. Taylor, listen to me. When cans out by curb, you at party. I'd like to see you go, too, by the way. You did well this week. That English grade, remember that? You're working well. There's no problems so far. But no cans out by curb? Taylor not out to party. And I'll tell you something. Part of the agreement wasn't that you had to do it. You had to see to it. So if you can bribe your mama, if you can bribe your sister, if you can get the next door neighbor to haul those cans out, I don't care how the cans get out, but you not out before cans out. When cans out, you out. And I can see him laughing and doing it. All right? Notice I haven't threatened him yet. The options are very clear. The line's very clear there. But suppose he says, well, I haven't got time for that. You know, there's a bunch of BS. I don't have time for that. Whoosh-ah, Taylor. Is there anything I can say or do? Is there anything I can say or do at this time to get you to work with me? I'd like to think so. And he's just heard the last sentence from me. And he'll have a sense of that when I say, is there anything? Do you know what's interesting? Let's say, yeah, I'm not going to do it. Go to your room. You're buried all weekend. That's it. Now, I'm going to send him to his room, and I'm going to do whatever punishment is appropriate in my family. He's not going anywhere. But here's what's interesting. What kind of boy am I going to have behind the door? Am I going to have a guy who's going to steep in the tea of righteous resentment for 16, 20 hours? Or do I have a guy who knows darn well he blew it? You see the difference? Verbal abuse starts and ends with a lack of technique. And verbal judo can give you that technique to turn a potential destructive argument into a kind of playful but nevertheless powerful way of redirecting people's behavior under pressure. And that you can take home, and you can take it to the bank, because you'll have more time to work and less time to mess around trying to discipline. So you have a 5-step hard style, one that is completely predictable. It'll allow you to know where you are at any given time and to attempt to play people around to a better position, one that's mutually beneficial for both you and for them. Now, trying to draw this together a little bit. You remember earlier I taught you the art of representation. That very simply was that figure 8. You never want to forget that. You stand between a rock and a hard place. If this is the department or the organization, you have to represent it to the customer or to the person on the street in such a manner, right, as to whoosha, bring them back into compliance. The crucial word there will be empathy. You've got to think like this guy here, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. That's the crucial word. The second art that I teach in my longer course is known as the art of translation. How to put what you mean in words appropriate or most appropriate to the person you're talking to. Because if I'm talking to some little old lady from Pasadena, I would talk differently than if I was talking to some hard-nosed crip from East LA trying to give me a little trouble. But no disrespect. Never any disrespect. But the words would be a little different. They'd be a little cleaner, a little more stark, and a little more authoritative. You understand? The crucial word here, remember, the essence of communication, you want to make it simple, is to take meaning one in your head and put meaning one in the other person's head. But in order to do that, you have to code it and send it appropriately. The crucial word here will be context. Putting it in their language. Great communicators, as I've watched them over the years, have an uncanny ability to speak the language of their audience. Okay? So if I have a classroom full, for example, of elderly citizens, I'm going to teach the same course, but I wouldn't use the same examples or the same level of language that I might use with some hard-nosed street cops. That makes some sense. In other words, what verbal judo enables you to do is find the right words for the right person at the right time and have an impact, a power and assertiveness that you can't have if you haven't done this kind of tactical training. Now, the third art, which is the one I want to teach you here, which I did in the 5 steps, but I'm going to come back and look at it a different way, is called the art of mediation. All right? Now, if you take a look at the word media, it comes from Latin, meaning both middle, but also to cut across. That's why we call radio, TV, news broadcast media, because it means to cut across. For example, if you've ever gone with your spouse to a psychologist, you don't go to a psychologist, for example, to have them tell you what to do. You go so that he or she can help you cut back across the experience you're having with your spouse so that you can find a new way to deal with it. Now, I tell cops that's the bottom line of what we do for a living on the streets, and that's our great service. And I suspect as parents, that's probably your great service to your children, and as professionals working in the field, I know it's your great service to others. Let me make it clear. I'm going to take a police story and then I'll relate it again. I learned this about 8 months. I had for 6 months a very fine training officer from San Jose, California. And though he did not have these terms, he taught me much of the art that I now teach. About 2 months after I was on my own, I stopped a guy. We had a call that a man, approximately 6, 7, or 8, 275 to 300 pounds, white man, no shirt, sweating profusely, had left the bar in pieces. He had busted up some tables, and the bartender wanted him arrested for disorderly conduct, destruction of private property, and theft of services. Now, we had mostly one-man vehicles in the town I worked in, Kansas, and I remember thinking, oh boy, it'd be my luck just to run against this guy, you know. And sure enough, sharking behind some bars, about 20 minutes later, here is this guy. Now, he's in an alley. Now, the one thing that the dispatcher didn't know was he was holding a broken bottle. Huge bottle in his hand, quart bottle of whiskey, broken off against some rock or wall. And he's standing there. He looks like a house, he's so big. So the first thing I did, of course, was call for some help. I said, send me some dogs and sticks. I said, I got a man as big as a house down here. Now, because I'm in a black and white, you know, I can't simply sit there and lock the windows and doors and wait, and I can't drive away like the average citizen would, just, you know, bye-bye. So I have to get out. Now, I got out to use words for one reason, to delay. I had no idea of anything called tactical communication. I have never had a course like this, okay, so I had to develop what I needed. But I got out of the car. To make a long story short, he's about where you are in the back row. Your name in the red sweater, sir, in the hat? Your name, sir? Ray. It's about where you are, Ray. I come out of the car this way, and I said to him, sir, excuse me, sir. And he got his attention. I said, listen to me. Understand you broke up some tables, sir, and left the bar without paying. I said, the bartender is pressing charges. Disorderly conduct, destruction of private property, theft of services. Sir, I need to have you put the bottle down and come with me. Would you do that for me, please? Well, verbal judo also started there, because people don't always do what you say when you tell them to. And he said, I ain't gonna do it, officer. He says, you're not big enough to take me. He says, come on, punk. He said, I'll hurt you bad. Come on. And he starts kind of this drunken shuffle down the alley. Well, I thought he had a pretty good point, to tell you the truth, you know. So what I did, I had to wait. I had to buy time, so I pulled my stick and I stepped back, still keeping about the same 40 or 50 feet away. And here's what I said to him. Now, you're experts now. Since you've been here long enough, you've got a sense of what I'm talking about. Listen to what I said. I didn't know to say this. I was just BSing him, okay? But, of course, I teach the art of BS, if you look at it carefully. Most people have lost that great art. The art of shucking and jiving with people, it's a great art. Now, watch this. I draw the stick, and I say, what are you going to do, sir? beat me up. I said, look at the size of you. I said, my God, you're as big as a house. I said, look at this face, sir. It's been hurt before. That's no big deal. I said, that's no big deal. I said, let me tell you something. Right now, sir, I'm just trying to arrest you for a misdemeanor. I said, do you understand what I'm talking about? A misdemeanor. Now, what's that? I said, what's that? That's overnight in jail. $30 if you're guilty. You're home with mama tomorrow. No, I said, you beat me up. I said, you hear those sirens, sir? They're coming for you. Men in dogs. People big sticks. People that like to fight. Now, you're going to hurt some of them. Let me tell you something. The bottom line is still going to be the same. You're going to jail. Doesn't matter how many of us it takes, but let me tell you something. Then you don't go for any misdemeanor. You're going to be looking at a felony. And I said, you can forget about overnight in jail. I said, last time I checked, a felony was what? Up to 90 days with no record, maybe $500, $600, $700 in fines and penalties. I said, do you have yourself a job, sir? And he said, well, yeah. I said, you won't have when you get out, sir. I said, what about a woman? You got yourself a lady at home? Now, I didn't know this, but I thank goodness came up with the right response. He said, well, yeah. I said, well, she might be there when you get out, sir. See, if I'd said she wouldn't, he'd probably fight on those grounds. But instead, I was lucky enough to come up with the sentence, she might be there. I said, listen to him. Listen to me. I said, you can do what you want, okay? I said, if we fight, it's going to cost you some time and money. I said, you don't need that kind of trouble. I said, I don't need that kind of trouble. I said, I've had a rough night. I said, why don't you put that bottle down? Because let me tell you something. That bottle, sir, constitutes a felony as we stand here. I'm looking for a misdemeanor. The bartender was looking for a misdemeanor. Why don't you put the bottle down? I didn't see it. And you know, this guy looked at the bottle as if he had never seen it. And he looked at it and he dropped it. Well, then I didn't know what to do, so I snapped at him, turn around. By gosh, she did. It was like a house on wheels, you know, guy turning like this in the alley. So then I had to say something, so I said, put your hands behind you. And by God, he did. Great big oak trees. And I went up and I had some hinge handcuffs and I just went click. One click, gentlemen. That's how big that man's wrists were. You know, usually there's numerous clicks. This was one click. That's how big that sucker was. But here's the point. I put him in the car and strapped him in. And I went 10-8, 10-15, which means with prisoner, to the county jail. Now, there's the story. Here's the point. As I'm driving out of the alley, in the rearview mirrors, I see some patrol cars coming with lights, full of dogs and sticks. They were coming for a fight. They love to fight in the town I work. And, you know, I'm driving out of the alley. And I felt a strange kind of power. Now, I was 35 at the time, and I had never felt this power before. It was all I could do. It was all I could do not to turn to this guy and go, whoosha! Took you out. Because didn't I? I mean, here he is, a great big 300-pound man cuffed. My face is not bleeding. My uniform is not ripped. We had to pay for those, right? All those other officers are back in service to serve the community. I am hook and book, and I'm back on the streets in 10 minutes, right? And I thought, what is that? I said, that's a tremendous kind of power. So when my training sergeant, who was named Bruce Fair, formerly from San Jose, and had come to Kansas, because he had inherited some farmland, and he continued to be a police officer, I said to Bruce, Bruce, what was that? I said, that really was kind of neat. He said, oh, that's nothing. Cops do it all the time. I said, well, maybe it's nothing to you. But I said, that is a strange kind of power. Talk to me about it. So here in debrief what we got, let me ask you something. When I get to the alley, is this man under the influence of liquor? Sure. Is he under the influence of rage? Sure. Is he under the influence of a need to look good? Always. And is he thinking well or thinking badly? Let me ask you something. When you get in a fight with your spouse, do you think well or badly? Badly. But do you think well or badly at the time? You think you're thinking well. See what I mean by brain damaged? Now, I had always been taught, see, we're all brain damaged, human beings, very hard. I had always been taught to confront, all right, a man like that. But because the situation did not allow me to use my natural kind of distalent, right, I was forced to talk. What I actually did without realizing it, now follow the diagram, was I redirected his behavior. And how did I do it? Well, look at this. Think of a misdemeanor, sir, versus a felony. There's one option. Think of $30, sir, versus $500, $600, $700, $800. Think of overnight in jail, sir, versus up to 90 days. Think of your job, sir. Think of your woman, sir. In short, think about it! And then do what you want, because I got to work 8 to 10 hours anyway. You know what cops do that is the greatest act in the country? Most of them. Not the guys we saw in the film, but most of them. We'll cut across our experiences out there and think for us as we might think for ourselves 48 to 72 hours later. Now, by think, look what I'm talking about. How many pieces of bait did I hang on my hook? Answer, 5. Think of your time, sir. Think of your money, sir. Think of your job, your girlfriend, and your record. I had 5 pieces of bait hanging on a hook. See why I call it a verbal come-along? Mediation is the ability for me to stay calm. Now go back up here and take a look at something for a minute. Did I stand and represent the law and the bartender's complaint. Yes. And I had to do it to the subject, and I had to do it in such a manner as to whoosha, get him to cooperate. You see why I don't call him a name, why I don't challenge him, and why I keep my ego out of it. Because the moment I do that, we have conflict. You take that home. And you see why empathy is important? Empathy, basically, remember, means to understand. The whole time I'm dealing with him, I'm only running one sentence through my mind. Where's this man coming from? I say, what has he got to gain? I say, what has he got to lose? You know why? Because if you know what your kid, your spouse, or this man in an alley has to gain or lose, you've got something to use. That's an old principle of persuasion. If a man's got something to gain or lose, you've got something to use. And that's why the crucial word here, right, is options. You see how context comes in. I put it in his context. I translated. I didn't talk about the bartender and all the law. What I did was talk in language that would hit home. Time, money, girlfriend, job, and record. Everybody has something to lose. Almost everybody has something to lose. And the good communicator, when his life is on the line and when the other person's life, we can find a way to tap into that. If I can think for you as you might think for yourself, without the liquor, without the anger, without the fear, without the homeboys watching you, whatever, I can usually get you to do what I want you to do. All right? So I'll put it in language that hits home. That's why context is crucial. And look at the word options. When I got to the alley, how many options did this man have? Actually, only two. Number one, he can fight, or number two, he can run. Well, number two is out. Is he going to run from a guy my size? Never happen. Just never happen, okay? So he's got to fight. What did I do? By the way in which I delivered, remember? I'll deliver it in such a way that I'll provide grounds for you to stand on. Remember that from the earlier example? Remember that? I gave him a second option, and that option was be cool, baby. Skate. Go for overnight. Take your lump overnight. Don't wrap your life up in 90 days, lose your job, lose your woman, possibly have a bad career. There's no call for that. There's no call. Just be cool, baby. I'm working with you here. You understand? Now, that's what great cops, and I've watched them from coast to coast. I've been on the streets for 15 years. I've been watching people work. This is what the great cops, the Ron Fosters in Long Beach, the Herb Jerones in L.A. County, the guys at LAPD that I'm working with now, the Mike Kinraids in Long Beach, these are the people that think for others as they might think for themselves, and they do it without even thinking about it. All I do is put a language to it. But notice options. You know what? There are only 4 total appeals to get people to do what you want. Okay? The very system I used in the alley, you should use with your children. Your job as parents, right, is not to make people do what they want to do, but to get them to do what you want them to do because of the way in which you handle them. Right? Explain to your child what they have to gain or lose. As I explained to Taylor. I said, Taylor, if you take trash out, then you go to party. I'd like to see you do that. No cans, no party. Remember? That's the 5-step business, right? Mediation. Try to cut across people's experience in a different way so they learn. The greatest communicators are the greatest educators. Every time I talk to my daughter Kelly or my son Taylor, it's my job to try to open their minds and educate them a little bit. So that when I'm no longer here, they can do the same thing for their children and they can live a better, more profitable, less turbulent life than I had. Because I've made every mistake in the verbal judo manual. Every one. That's where these scars came from. A couple of divorces came from that I'm not proud about, right? Most people not given this kind of information. Now, the 4 appeals. The first, well, the one I just illustrated to you is really the second. This business, if I can hook you up by showing what you have to gain or lose, I'm using what I call the personal appeal. Think of that as meaning selfish. Are most people selfish, do you think? Sure, most people will not work against their best interests if they know what those interests are, right? The personal appeal says do it because it's good for you to do it. It makes sense for you to do it. So that's where empathy comes in. I've got to think like the warrior to see what you've got to lose. See, sir, if I can think what you have to lose. What's your name, sir, in the blue shirt? Rocky. Victor? Me. Blue shirt. Rocky. Rocky. If I can think what you've got to gain or lose, I've got a way to put it that can make you act the way I would like you to. All right, for the betterment of both of us. Okay, I'm not out there conning you. I'm not raising your belief to cheat you of your pocketbook. I'm trying to bring us to a more peaceful conclusion. It's called the personal appeal. Okay, the personal appeal. Get people to do what you want them to do because they see there's a good reason to do it, and you got to know you're the person you're talking to be able to do it. You know what the most necessary appeal is? There's only one more powerful than that one, and it's called the ethical appeal. And my whole course is about that. Take the word ethics. The word ethical comes from the Greek word ethos, which means something like self, the professional self presented. Do you know what? You know what's amazing? As I've studied cops and I've studied teachers and I've studied business people and sales people and insurance people, do you know what's amazing? Most people will do what you want them to do if they believe in you. On the streets it sounds like this, well, I'll go with that officer, I ain't going with him. Right? We hear that all the time. Or somebody says, well, I'll go and buy from that person, but I'm not going to buy from this person. All right? You know, if you can conduct yourself with dignity and respect, and if you can give dignity and respect to others, which is the hallmark of the United States, there is no better. There is only difference. Remember? There is no better. There is only difference. And this country should glorify in the difference, which means if we are the only country in the world that is a melting pot of hundreds of different cultures, right, then we need to have a communication system, right, that will allow us to interact with people on a more civilized basis. Because if we do not, we will destroy ourselves from within, and I think there is no question about that. And the great thing about verbal judo is it will enable you to have that kind of system. It'll enable you to deal with people that you don't like, people you don't even respect, but that you now know you have to give some respect to if you wish to modify or change their behavior, which you may well be in a position of having to do. If not in your professional life, then in your personal life. The ethical appeal. Most people will do what you want them to if they believe in you. If you don't have that, no other appeal works. Then the personal is the second most powerful. Do it because it's good for you. And I'll show that to you. That's my service. See, we protect people from themselves and we think for them. That's our service. We think for people. And I think that's what the great salesperson does. If I go to buy a car and some guy pushes me on, pushes a car on me that he should know from my readout, right, I cannot really afford 6 or 8 months down the line. I'm going to get frustrated and return it, or I'm going to go in debt and it's going to be repossessed. You know, the greatest friend you have is someone who thinks for you when you might think for yourself, right? Better later. I go there and I want this car and I'm all, I can't wait to get in this and drive, but maybe I can't afford it. Give me the salesman who says, George, wait a minute, I know you like the car. I like you in the car, but I'd like you in the car 4 years from now, 3 years from now, better than I'd like it now. All right? Try this one. This is going to cause you less stress, less frustration. All right? Let me see if I can't sell you something that really is good for you now. I don't want you returning it, and I don't want you to feel bad. Think of that. I mean, you don't hear salespeople say, that guy's thinking of his commission. I say, think of the person you're dealing with, all right? So, the ethical, do it because I'm the kind of person dealing with you. The personal, right? There is another one called reason. And this is, by the way, this is why persuasion is so necessary. Do you know that most people don't do anything because of logic or reason? They find good reason for it later. Reason is one of the weakest appeals in the world. How much of what you do is based on good reason, right? Usually after the fact. Reasoning has to do with reasoning, common sense, and logic. And common sense, by the way, would you not agree with me? Common sense is a highly uncommon commodity under pressure, right? And that's where this is, again, why verbal judo is so necessary. If I can put a man under pressure, I can make him lose his common sense, and the moment he loses his common sense, he's history, right? So I train people, if you will, on how to maintain, quote, common sense, street savvy, right? The martial arts of the mind and the mouth, so we can actually have a better society, because there are no answers politicians will give you that is better than this one. The day we can get our mind and our mouth in harmony, with our children first and our spouses second, right? And then we can do it with our neighbors, and then we can do it with our community. We will build from the inside out the strongest nation in the world. And as long as we're putting people down, humiliating people, racially epithetting people, right, and trying to make people feel bad, climbing on their shoulders and heads to make them feel bad, we will have a country rift, torn apart by anger, right, hatred, and distrust. I offer you tactical communication. I offer you a way of doing it better, a mind and mouth harmony that can bring you pride and peace at home as well as on the streets. I do thank you for your attention. You've been a heck of a good audience. Thank you. Whoosha! Thank you. Thank you.